Chapter 133. List's telescope was divided into long tubes and short tubes. The long tube was a telescope used to observe the moon, with a magnification of more than 30 times. The short tube was a portable telescope he was going to make for the night squad. It could be stretched and had a magnification of about 15 times at most. 20 concave and convex lenses could only form one long tube and 3 short tubes. The remaining lenses were unqualified. He threw the lenses to Carter. "Mr. Carter, look around and see which lens can magnify the image. You can use it to read books." Carter was old and his eyesight was a bit poor. Wouldn't it be nice to give him a magnifying glass? One long tube was left in the castle, 3 short tubes. List carried one with him. Marcus Night Squad got one, and Carl, Patrol Squad got one. The distribution was over. Originally, List intended to retain the crystal craftsman Brad with a high salary, but the other party refused without hesitation. Although the Flower Town was developing rapidly, but compared to the Coral City, the gap was still huge. It could not attract free craftsmen with good social status. Similarly, Isaiah's family came to Flower Town to visit him, but when Isaiah persuaded them to stay, they refused without hesitation. His son even said, "Are you kidding me? There isn't even a brothel here." Gort's family also came to Flower Town to visit him. They stayed for 2 days and then left. After all, they were aristocrats. Their children and grandchildren had a good life, so they did not want to live in the countryside. His wife intended to settle in Flower Town, but Gort refused. The reason was very noble. Flower Town was too barren and he did not want his wife to suffer. In fact, he was afraid that the other party would discover Freya's existence. Freya's belly was already bulging. "Sir Lord, I heard that you have invented a telescope that can see far away?" After hearing the news, Captain Costo hurried to the castle. "I wonder if the Flower can be equipped with a telescope? Sailing at sea requires a very good field of vision, and a telescope can provide us with great help." It was a very reasonable request. List was a bit hesitant. The telescope suitable for sailing was probably the long List telescope in the castle, but it was equipment for him to explore the universe. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Captain Costo, go back and train your apprentice sailors first. The logging team will soon open a path to the wharf. The Flower Town's wharf is about to be established. You can familiarize yourself with the situation near the wharf first. As for the binoculars, we will have them. Send Costo away." List reluctantly took out a piece of crystal and handed it to Thomas. "When the Flower Town's transport team comes back, give it to the person in charge. Tell him to ask Brad Crystal Artisan to carve 2 sets of number 3 and number 17 lenses. The number 3 and no. 17 lenses were the lens models for assembling long tubes. For List, the binoculars were more like a joke. After studying it and playing with it for a while, he actually lost interest in the telescope. Looking at the moon and stars all day long, he couldn't see any secrets of the universe. Therefore, he took Trembling Woods out to inspect the work of the logging team, just to distract himself. To the north of the dairy farm, there was a large area of thorns and shrubs. This was the area covered by Thorn's worm stalk. In addition to ordinary thorns, there were also fast-growing varieties of thorns, including fast-growing poisonous thorns and fast-growing thorns. It was unknown if there was a follow-up to the Thorn's worm chain mission. Further northeast of the thorns and shrubs was the logging team's work site. The site was in full swing. Thick smoke billowed. Countless serfs were sweating as they cut down trees. Some people used axes to chop down tree trunks, some used saw blades to chop off tree branches, some used machetes to chop off branches and leaves, while others piled up tree trunks and branches together and took away the leaves and burned them on the spot. Burning the bonfires was not only to intimidate wild beasts in World of Warcraft, but also to accumulate plant ash, which would be composted when reclaiming wasteland in the future. Clerks and patrols shuttled back and forth among the serfs, frequently berating and cursing, urging the serfs to work hard. Gort, Isaiah, Blair, and Carl each commanded a large group of serfs to maintain order at the scene. Marcus took the night squad to seriously patrol the periphery. Seeing List arrive, Gort trotted over. "Sir, good afternoon." "Good afternoon, Teacher Gort." List greeted. "A quarter of the town's population should be cutting down trees here. How long do you think it will take to cut down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge?" "If we have enough tools, it will only take 20 days. No, it might only take 2 weeks. But we don't have enough tools, sir. Many people share an axe, a saw blade, and a machete, which is too much of a delay. Even if the serfs respond enthusiastically to your call, they still won't be able to exert their full strength. I have already had the flower caravan purchase tools from various cities. Iron tools are too expensive and bone tools are too brittle. I hope father can plunder a batch of iron ore. Otherwise, the lack of iron on Coral Island will never be solved. There were no metals, no gems, and the number of elves was also scarce. The reason why the aristocrats were keen on fighting on the continent instead of staying on the island was often because they had no other choice. If they had foresight, they might develop technology to make up for this gap. But they didn't, so they could only plunder resources from the continent to make up for the deficiency. Why was the Eagle Kingdom repeatedly harassed by the Sapphire Kingdom? It was because they had the White Iron Dragon, which could produce a large amount of iron ore. Steel was probably the metal with the most practical value among all metals. Therefore, as long as the Steel Ridge Kingdom called for war, the Sapphire Grand Duke would immediately issue an order to expand, and the aristocrats would swarm over to burn, kill, and plunder. List sometimes thought, why do I always feel that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire is a pirate from another world? Relying on their overseas establishment and well-developed fleet, they would unscrupulously attack the kingdoms on the continent. Snatch and run. Every year he would repeat the same script. It was wonderful. Although there was no technical content, they were still successful every year. It was unknown how many times the Count had been to the continent. Little by little, he had accumulated such a large fortune on Coral Island. Sir, because of the logging work, the town's construction and road construction have been temporarily suspended. The autumn harvest is coming soon, and the barley settlement and wheat settlement may not have enough manpower. It won't be too late to transfer people back after the harvest date is determined. List suddenly thought of something and looked at Gort. Teacher Gort, how long have you been with me to Flower Town? Gort was taken aback and then said, Sir, on March 9th, the Baron of Flower Town was in theft. I set out the next day and arrived at Flower Town in the afternoon. Today is September 23rd, 6 months and 2 weeks have passed. 6.5 months passed in a flash. But the current Flower Town is definitely not the Flower Town of 6 months ago, which exudes vitality everywhere. Yes, I am very satisfied with the development of Flower Town. List rode Black Dragon walking slowly. The world in front of him had already integrated with him. What I am most satisfied with is the change in thinking. Teacher Gort, 6 months ago you were always talking about drinking. Now, you know to finish your work first and then drink. You even delay drinking for work. Gort smiled awkwardly. People tend to slack off when they get older. Fortunately, I came to Flower Town and found the confidence and hard work of my youth. I am very pleased with the changes in you. List looked into the distance and said, maybe in a few days a batch of 500 serfs will arrive. I need you to make a settlement plan. It is not enough to settle the serfs individually. I need an overall plan for the future of Flower Town, as a consultant. Hearing the word, consultant. Chapter 134. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire followed the system of the Steel Ridge Kingdom. Knights were headed by the Patriarch of the Orders of Chivalry, while officials were headed by advisors. As List's home tutor, Gort was appointed by the Count to follow List to the Flower Town after the enfeoffment system. What he wanted was the position of advisor. After all, no matter how nice the home tutor sounded, it couldn't change the fact that he was a servant. The same was true for Marcus. He was also a home tutor, but his identity was still a retainer knight, belonging to the servant sequence. Even though Gort was an aristocrat, albeit the lowest rank of Chevalier Knight, he wasn't even an aristocrat. He was just one of the better commoners. Sir, you want to confer the position of Flower Town's advisor on me? Gort still couldn't believe it. He had been here for half a year, yet List had never mentioned the position of advisor. He was about to give up. He didn't expect good news to fall from the sky. Caught off guard, he was appointed as an advisor. What's wrong? Is Teacher Gort not willing to take the position? I'm willing, of course I am willing. How could I not be willing, ha? Gort was in high spirits, beaming with joy. I am ready to serve, sir, at any time. In governing the Flower Town, I must do what I preach. I will definitely live up to my duties as an advisor and will not slack off in the slightest. List said, I have seen your recent work attitude. You are my home tutor, so I trust you. The Flower Town is my only fief and also the foundation of my fight for glory. Its importance is self-evident. I hope that you can take it seriously. Gort put away his bright smile, put his left hand on his chest, and solemnly performed a knight's salute. As you wish. I will leave the Flower Town to you, my advisor. I am willing to serve, sir. There was no grand appointment ceremony. The Flower Town was just a small rural town. Just like that, an advisor equivalent to the town's mayor was selected. Strictly speaking, being an advisor sounded better than being an administrative officer at most. Gort's real power did not increase by much. An advisor could appoint the town's officials. It sounded like he had great power, but the castle was just next door. No official appointment could avoid List. However, their income had greatly increased. His salary, which used to be 10 copper coins a day, was increased to 20 copper coins a day. With a higher income, he would be able to buy a lot of extra wine or some furniture for his and Freja's small family. Congratulations, Lord Advisor. Isaiah and the others congratulated Gort. Gort was in high spirits, laughing incessantly. For Sir Baron List, for the grace of the night, and for the future of all of us, let us make Flower Town more prosperous and prosperous. People are in high spirits when faced with happy events. Over the next 2 days, Gort, who was acting as a consultant, devoted himself to his work with great enthusiasm. In addition to managing specific affairs, he did not forget List's instructions to make an overall arrangement for the future planning of the Flower Town. To this end, he made a request at the dinner party. Sir, I am going to carry out another census of the town. No, it should be called a census of the town's resources. First of all, the farmland area should be calculated and the agricultural structure of the Flower Town should be planned. When the 500 serfs arrive, the serfs can be quickly arranged to farm. Secondly, investigate the caravan's merchandise sales and reasonably arrange craftsmen to run the shops. He waved a small fork, disregarding aristocratic etiquette, and said passionately, there will be more and more caravans coming and going from the town. The flower caravan and the thorns caravan can sell the town's products. Our commercial district will soon prosper and bring a lot of gold coins to the castle. Very good idea. Advisor Gort, make this plan in more detail and then let me have a look. Yes, sir. Outside the town's administrative office, Costo was pacing back and forth. From time to time, civilians passing by would greet him, and he would respond one by one. Costo was now a celebrity in the town. The source of his fame was not because he was the first captain of the Flower Town's first ship, the Flower, but because of his tireless attitude of seeking. Almost every family's young son had been roped in by him. Young man, you have a lot of ideas. Learn sailing from me. Even those young bachelors had been roped in by him. There are more men than women in the Flower Town. You can't get a wife. It is better to learn sailing from me. There are countless women in the outside world. After a trip, you can marry a hard-working and capable woman with a big ass and give birth to many sons for you. Most people scoffed at Costo's roping in. The mainland complex, brought by the aristocracy, made the narrow-minded commoners have a natural fear and ignorance of the sea. Therefore, after countless setbacks, Costo only roped in 10 bachelors and 12 teenagers to learn sailing from him and become apprentice sailors. Moreover, this was free teaching. If he were to collect tuition fees, it was estimated that no one would come. He also had to subsidize a few tons of lunches from time to time. If it wasn't for the fixed salary paid by the Sir Lord to teach the night squad, he wouldn't even be able to get a single apprentice. Costo was not discouraged by his yearning for the sea. He was still enthusiastic to train apprentice sailors of varying ages. But for the past 2 days, none of the apprentice sailors had come. Costo was anxious. Clop, clop, clop. The horses' hooves made a crisp sound as they stepped on the gravel road. He immediately went to greet them. The town's consultant had returned. Sir Consultant. Oh, it's Captain Costo. What's the matter? Gort looked travel-worn, and his face was a little purple from the sun. My apprentices have all gone to cut down trees. Sir Consultant, they need to learn sailing instead of being transferred to do insignificant things like cutting down trees. I'm sorry, Costo. Cutting down trees is not an insignificant matter. Sir Lord personally instructed me to do this. It is related to the future development of the entire Flower Town. Your sailing career can wait a few days. In any case, you don't need to go to sea. Just give yourself a vacation. I don't have the time to take a vacation even if I wanted to. Gort didn't attach much importance to Costo. He just wanted to send him away. The town couldn't even farm, so how could it have the leisure to go sailing? However, he underestimated Costo's determination. After saying that, Sir Lord wants to develop the sailing career, Costo followed Gort. Wherever Gort went, he would go, even if Gort went home. Gort had no choice but to agree. I can transfer 12 of your apprentice sailors to continue learning sailing from you. However, the adult apprentices must cut down trees. All right. Costo hurriedly responded. He was already satisfied that he could get 12 apprentice sailors. There is one more thing. If the youngsters help at the tree-cutting site, they will get a copper coin for 2 days. You will have to pay for this loss. Oh heavens, I don't have any money. Don't tell me you don't want the youngsters to earn money? Their parents will teach you how to be a man, Costo. The sailing career is for Sir Lord's glory. Do you want the town to just stand by and watch? The town should pay for this. After another round of shameless wrangling, Gort finally agreed that the town would subsidize the apprentices' lost wages during the logging war. Only then did Costo board the Flower, satisfied. Chapter 135. Ready. Ready, change sails with the wind. Tighten the rope. Let's go downwind. Prepare to lower the sails. Paddle room, paddle on the left. Raise the foresail. On the slightly undulating sea, the Flower slowly sailed with the current, stopping from time to time, making a circle or turning a corner. Captain Costo's voice, which came with a loudspeaker effect, constantly sounded throughout the ship, giving various orders. The 12 sailors were in a flurry to control the ship. According to the size and tonnage of the Flower, 12 sailors were simply not enough to operate the ship. The full complement was 30 sailors. The work of 30 people was done by 12 teenagers, and they were all newcomers. The pressure could be imagined. The Flower's sailing was also intermittent, always unable to sail steadily to the target. But no matter what, under Costo's command and guidance, the Flower still stuck to the seaside, sailing to the northern pier area. Half a day later, the teaching and learning voyage smoothly arrived at the destination. It was a rocky beach. The Flower anchored in the bay for a short time as lunchtime, and also to train the sailors in swimming lessons. The coastal area is not like what people say where sea monsters eat people. This is not the living area of sea monsters. Sea monsters live in the deep sea, and sailing offshore will basically not encounter sea monsters. Of course, if you are unlucky and bask in the sun on the shore, a sea monster will crawl over and eat you. Costo tried to dispel the apprentice sailors' fear of deep water, but his words were obviously not up to standard. The apprentice sailors were even more afraid to go into the water. Swimming on the beach could make them nervous for a long time, let alone here in the deep water bay. "Captain, we already know how to swim." An apprentice sailor argued in a low voice. "Can deep water and shallow water be the same?" "Absolutely not. You have to overcome your fear of the blue water. It will save your life at a critical moment." "How can that be? We are on the ship, we will never run into the water for no reason." "Idiot. When sailing in the sea, the waves often roll up the sailors and they fall into the sea. If you don't know how to swim, you won't even have time to be rescued." "That, Captain, I just came to be an apprentice sailor. I have no intention of going to sea." "If I don't have this plan, then why are you learning sailing? Do you think that I, Costo, am easy to fool?" Costo flew into a rage. He pointed at the apprentice sailor's nose and roared, "I am the captain of the Flower appointed by Sir Lord. In the future, I will go out to sea to trade for Sir Lord. You will be the first batch of sailors. You can fool me, but do you dare to fool Sir Lord?" The apprentice sailors were all submissive. He suddenly felt as though he had boarded a pirate ship. Costo gave up on persuading him with kind words and directly threatened, "I have been authorized by Sir Lord to take full responsibility for the navigation matters. The Flower Town Sir Advisor also has to cooperate with me. Remember, whoever dares to escape or go against my orders, I will hand you over to Lord Carl's patrol team." Hearing the name of the patrol team, the youths became even more timid. Sir Lord was indeed noble and inviolable, but it was said that Sir Lord was the embodiment of benevolence. They were not afraid, only reverent. But the patrol team was famous. Liszt had always wanted to build the patrol team into a police station where the police and the people were like one family. Unfortunately, there was no hope. The existence of flogging and other corporal punishments was bound to make people fearful. Carl meticulously implemented the rules in return for the Lord's trust in him. Any commoner who made a mistake would be directly whipped. Not a single whip would be spared. This caused everyone to pale at the mention of the patrol team. Costo was very satisfied when he saw the youth's expressions. After brandishing the stick, he turned to brandishing the carrot. "Don't be afraid of the sea. The sea is the same as the land. If we can farm on land, then we can sail on the sea. Going out to sea is the best decision for you. There is endless wealth overseas, as well as women with big breasts and big buttocks." Is there really a woman with a big buttocks?" A youth overcame his fear and swallowed. "Of course. I once went to an island where the war had just ended. The women stood in a row and everyone chose. I chose the woman with the biggest buttocks," said Costo in a nostalgic tone. "And then, Captain? And then?" "Yes, Captain. And then you and the big buttocks? And then?" Costo licked his lips. "And then I gave her 3 copper coins. In fact, she only needed 2 copper coins to spend a comfortable night, but I gave her an extra copper coin. That towering mountain gave me an unparalleled experience. I swear it can suffocate your head inside. Costo drew a circle with his hand. A very large circle. It was so huge that the youths were dumbfounded. Gulp, gulp. The youths swallowed. All right, the break is over. It's time for class, lads. If you want a woman with a big body, then you have to learn according to my requirements. When you become qualified sailors, you can still spend 2 copper coins to spend a wonderful night. Now dive, swim. The youths immediately overcame their fear. They howled and jumped into the sea. Costo took out a wooden wine pot from his bosom, unplugged it, and took a sip. He understood what these youths wanted. After all, he was also young. After drinking a mouthful of wine, he returned to the captain's cabin and carefully took out a 1-meter-long cylinder from a box. This was the telescope that the Sir Lord had sent a servant to deliver yesterday. The Sir Lord had assigned his telescope to the Flowers. It was this telescope that allowed him to understand the Sir Lord's views on sailing. He longs for the sea more than any other aristocrat. Costo felt that his future was bright. An aristocrat who yearned for the sea would undoubtedly support his sailing. It was precisely because of this that he had the confidence to go to the administrative office and pester Advisor Gort to fight for benefits. Holding the telescope, he went to the deck. For him, the swaying deck was more stable than land. He picked up the telescope and began to look into the distance. The distant scenery seemed to suddenly appear in front of him. It was a wonderful transformation. It felt incredible. Only a noble aristocrat like the Sir Lord can make such an incredible object. He looked at the sea level in the distance, then looked at the thick smoke of the distant Thorns Ridge, then looked at the several seabirds walking on the rocky beach, and then looked at the steep rocky mountain on the shore. Suddenly, he frowned slightly and saw that there seemed to be a cave on the rocky mountain that had been washed by the sea. A cave? The mountain here isn't high, so there should be a cave. What kind of cave could it be? There seems to be a seabird flying out of the cave just now. Could there be a sea poison? The sea poison was a gull-type seabird that nested on the cliffs by the sea. Its eggs were very popular among the aristocrats. Some aristocrats would even arrange for serfs to risk their lives to collect sea poison eggs. Chapter 136. For the Hellion Egg. Costo waited for the teenagers to finish their swimming lesson and immediately set off. He started the Flower and stumbled towards the cave over there. Not far from the cave he could clearly see the appearance of the cave. It was not big, after all, the mountain was not high and the flat cave entrance was like a big mouth. It was not deep inside and he could clearly see the situation inside at a glance. In particular, Costo could see more clearly with his binoculars. Oh heavens! There are actually bones. He saw several human skeletons lying in the cave. There were also some broken things and even the wreckage of a small boat. Drop anchor. Release the canoe. He roared, ready to disembark and row the canoe over to see what was going on inside the cave. The castle. In the nearby black nightshade field. List was inspecting his black nightshade. It is about to be born, Mr. Carter, my 9th sprite worm. List stroked the big budding flower and released magic eyes. He could clearly see light blue magic power converging from all over the black nightshade's branches and leaves towards the special flower, giving birth to the black nightshade sprite worm. It's really a night's glory. We all thought it was impossible to survive, but it stubbornly survived. Master, Mr. Gort said that you are a son of glory and I firmly believe it. It is your glory that shines on the black nightshade sprite worm. Perhaps I am indeed very lucky. The title of Son of Glory, like the literati star descends to the world back on earth, was a conforming title. List did not know whether he was a son of glory or some other kind of son. The smoke mission brought him far more luck than ordinary people, which was probably the night's glory. He did not dwell too much on this point. He just said indifferently, be sure to take care of it often, and inform me as soon as the black nightshade sprite worm is born. Please rest assured, the castle's valet will come to check on the black nightshade every hour except at night, Carter replied. By the way, is it time for stupid woman to feed? It was almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon when we set out, so it is indeed time to feed. Then let's go back first. Returning to the castle, Zhang Xian led Dosen along with the servants to feed him water. Stupid woman's iron cage has been custom-made and placed 500 meters away from the castle. With the iron cage as the center, the foundation is being excavated 20 meters around, and a 3-meter-high wall will be built. The top of the wall will also be equipped with a sloping baffle to prevent Stupid Woman from escaping. But now Stupid Woman has not eaten for 3 days. She could only wait for List to be present to monitor its condition and ask the servants to feed it some water to prevent it from dying of thirst. Whoa! Seeing someone coming, Stupid Woman, who was lying on the ground, climbed up softly and stared fiercely at List and his party. Its ferocious nature had obviously not diminished by much. Woof woof. Dosen rushed over and circled around the cage, wagging his tail and barking at Stupid Woman enthusiastically. Stupid Woman, however, had no enthusiasm for it. She stared back at Dosen and continued to growl in a low voice. The feeding device hasn't been delivered yet? List glanced at the cage and asked Thomas, who was following behind him. Even the stakes have not been placed. It's too slow. The feeding device was a feeding device specially designed for Stupid Woman. After all, Stupid Woman was not Dosen, who could hurt people at any time. To prevent this, she was kept in a cage. But after all, she had to be fed and it was impossible to starve her to death. Therefore, a feeding device was designed. From the outside of the fence, a rope was used to slide and feed into the iron cage. At the same time, the iron cage could be pulled. Once the feces in the cage accumulated too much, the cage and Stupid Woman would be pulled away, and the ground would be cleaned and then pulled back. It's complicated. In fact, it's very simple, just a simple application of a few ropes. For the sake of his future army of flying dust dogs, List carefully designed it. It has no magic at all. It turns out that even World of Warcraft can't condense magic when it's hungry, List thought. In World of Warcraft, half of the magic is produced by the body and the other half is absorbed from the outside world. However, in a starving state, not only can the body not produce magic, but it also has no strength to absorb magic from the outside world. This shows the importance of nutrition for cultivation. Thomas, feed it water. Yes, master. Thomas carefully carried the bucket and moved to the side of the violent dog's iron cage. Even though he had fed it several times, his hands and feet still trembled. Oh! Stupid Woman increased the volume of her low growl at him. Thomas's hands shook so much that he spilled half of the water he scooped. When he reached for the cage to pour water, Stupid Woman poked her head over again. This time the water was completely spilled. He bowed his head and hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry, master. Continue to feed it. Stupid Woman can no longer release magic. She is only equivalent to a wild dog, remember that. Yes, master. The second time, with preparation, Thomas finally poured the water into the basin. Stupid Woman growled for a while, but when she saw that she could not scare Thomas, she began to drink. By the time Stupid Woman finished drinking, Dosen was already anxiously walking around outside. It had eaten its fill. List coughed and said, Thomas, push the iron cage over there. There were 2 iron cages, one for Stupid Woman to live in and the other to send Dosen in. For fear that Stupid Woman would run out, the iron cages would be joined together and the cage door would be opened. Because it had been done once yesterday, Dosen cooperatively got into the small iron cage and was pushed to the door of the large cage by Thomas and the other servants. Pulling out the iron door of the cage, the 2 cages were suddenly connected. Dosen quickly rushed in, threw himself on Stupid Woman and began to shake vigorously. Stupid Woman, who had been hungry for 3 days, was powerless to resist. Half an hour later it was all over. Only Stupid Woman was left lying in the cage, her eyes closed, staring blankly at the sky that was divided into squares. There were white clouds floating freely in the sky. On the other side, Dosen was in high spirits, wantonly playing on the horse field. He had a good time every day. His body was stronger and this kind of strength could be felt every day. His muscles were not as swollen as they were at the beginning, and he gradually returned to the normal figure of a flying dust dog, a little fat and streamlined. But his current length and height had definitely surpassed that of an adult tiger. His magic was also rising, and he could already release rock thorns 45 times a day. List increasingly felt that Dosen might really have a chance to evolve to the intermediate World of Warcraft. So the food given to him was getting better and better. Almost every meal was World of Warcraft meat, which was equivalent to feeding Dosen with gold coins. Dosen's daily food intake was probably more than 7 lists. At least 1 gold coin a day, Dosen, you can't let me down. List said to himself and then ordered, Dosen, release magic. Dosen, who was running, barked subconsciously and then released magic. Poochie. Poochie. 2 rock thorns pierced the ground in front of him at the same time. 2 rock thorns released at the same time? List saw it and was very surprised. Releasing 2 magic at the same time was equivalent to a new kind of magic. Only intermediate World of Warcraft could release multiple magic. Chapter 137. Treasure? Liszt became excited when he heard it. He immediately summoned Costo, who was waiting in the castle. "What treasure?" "Sir Lord, it is a nautical route to an island. During the trial voyage of the flower, I found a cave not far from the pier. There were human corpses inside. After inspection, it was found that a group of rats were trapped in the cave and died. Before they died, they left behind the location of the horse trade which was on that island." "Horse dealers?" Liszt quickly thought of the smoke mission. Traces of black dragon horses. He gave up on studying the new spell released by Dosen and immediately said, "Take me to the cave, I want to investigate it myself." While preparing to set off, he took the opportunity to summon the smoke mission. He found that the smoke mission had changed. Mission completed. Reward, traces of black dragon horses. Mission, World of Warcraft has been cleaned up. The Flower Town has never been so safe. As the Lord, it is time to go all out and achieve leapfrog development for the Flower Town. What harm is there in destroying the environment? Please flatten the thorns forest. Reward, a variant type of thorns. World of Warcraft had been cleaned up. The Thorn Sprite Worm Chain mission had also been restarted. Liszt felt that today was a festive day. He was just short of magpies chirping on the branches. Soon he understood how the mission was completed. Retainer Knight Sean brought a dead shadow snake to the castle. The shadow snake bit 3 serfs to death. The logging site was very chaotic. However, under the suppression of Sir Marcus, Consultant Gort and other Sir, the serfs went back to logging work. Sean reported the scene at the time. The burning bonfire did not scare away the shadow snake. It attacked 3 serfs in succession and was eventually killed by Marcus with a bow and arrow. Afterward the serfs panicked. Although they were suppressed, their work efficiency inevitably fluctuated. Sean, tell Teacher Marcus to continue to strengthen the protection of the logging team. Although the World of Warcraft had been wiped out, Liszt could not tell others clearly and could only continue to strengthen the protection. In addition, tell Consultant Gort that each family of a dead serf will be given a gold coin. At this time, gold coins were the best way to comfort and stimulate the serfs to work harder. It was more convincing than any threats or encouraging words. "Yes, sir." Xiao En accepted the order and left. Liszt put on his World of Warcraft leather armor and brought along his valet Thomas, as well as Rome Winebarrel, who had been notified to act as a squire. How could a lord not have a squire when he went out? "Sir Lord, we can actually reach the cave by land, but we need to cross the mountain ridge and climb a steep cliff. Taking the flower is the most convenient." Costo bowed to Liszt and began to direct the flowers to set sail. The anchor was pulled, the oars were rowed, and the sails were raised. They changed direction and slowly sailed on the sea. After a voyage, the young sailors performed well. Their speed was much faster than before, and it only took them about 20 minutes to reach the vicinity of the cave. After putting down the canoe, Costo led Liszt and the others into the cave. The cave was very damp and was almost level with the high tide, so from time to time, the waves would push in seawater. However, the deeper part of the cave was dry. It was afternoon, and the sun had already set over the mountain ridge. The sunlight no longer shone in, making the cave somewhat dark. Thomas lit the candles he had prepared earlier to increase the light in the cave. "Sir Lord, there is the wreckage of a small boat here. Looking at its shape, it should be a small boat carried by a large ship. After being continuously washed by the sea, only a little wooden plank is left." Costo turned the wreckage over. The wreckage broke into pieces and scattered sawdust on the ground. Then he went to a few sets of bones. There are a total of 3 human corpses. I have examined them, and they are in good condition without losing too many bones. They carried weapons, bone swords. The bones are very hard, but they are not in the shape of a knight sword, so they should be a group of rats. Knight, as the name suggests, was a warrior on horseback. Knight was the main force of war, the composition of the army. The war between lords was the charge between knight. However, not all people who cultivated chi chose to become a knight. Knight was a product of the aristocratic system, and there were still some people who chose to dissociate from the aristocratic system. These people were smugglers, marginal people, and despicable people. They did not obey the management of the lord, did not work in production, and were free and undisciplined. They engaged in industries that violated the aristocratic system, such as theft, robbery, smuggling, pimping, or accepting employment to carry out assassinations, slave trading, and so on. These people were naturally called rats. But they called themselves rangers. Rats. Liszt was not very moved. He was no stranger to rats. He and Levis cooperated in the slave trade, so they had to cooperate with rats. The aristocrats denounced and belittled this group of people as rats, but it did not prevent them from cooperating with rats. After all, it was not convenient for the aristocrats to do many dirty things themselves, so they needed rats to do it. The pirates that appeared in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire were also rats. They were basically aristocrats in disguise. Rats were another skin of the aristocrats. Ordinary people did not have so much nutrition to cultivate qi, only the aristocrats could raise rats. Liszt believed that the Tulip family also had their own rats. As the second son of the Count, he had no right to know. Are there any more things that show their identity preserved? Liszt picked up a bone sword and asked. This bone sword should be made from the bones of World of Warcraft. It was curved, completely different from the long and straight knight sword. It was more suitable for close combat. After a long period of natural corrosion, the bone sword had no traces of magic. Their clothes and parcels have long since decayed. The humidity here is very high, so it is impossible to preserve them. Only these serpentines engraved on the walls remain. Costo pointed to the cave wall and said. Thomas moved the candle lamp closer. It illuminated the serpentines on the cave wall. The serpentines were already blurred, divided into two large sections, and only part of them could be recognized. I was seriously injured and about to die. Swite was a mole, an informant. The green light sank the ship and took away the horse. But he underestimated me and killed me. I couldn't walk out of the steep cliff. The horse, the letter on its back you can rush over. A nautical chart of the island? My family tell Molly that I love her, Caspar Iron. They was a single serpentine character that could not be seen clearly, while the was an entire paragraph of serpentine that could not be seen clearly. He could barely guess the contents of these two paragraphs. After pondering for a moment, Liszt figured out the gist of it. There was a mole among the horse dealers who seemed to be called Swite. He sank the ship and wanted to take away the horse. In the end, Caspar was killed, but he was seriously injured. Before he died, he sent away the horse and tied a letter on its back. Then he left the nautical chart. Comparing it with the reward given by the smoke mission, Liszt already understood. Obviously, this group of rats found the island where Black Dragon lived. They should be rats working for the Tulip family. My Black Dragon is the horse that was sent away by Caspar. Thinking of this, his gaze couldn't help but turn to the nautical chart next to the serpentines. Chapter 138. He understood the meaning of the treasure. Liszt suppressed his excitement and asked flatly, Captain Costo, can you understand this nautical chart? Sir Lord, this nautical chart is a general nautical chart with not too complicated content. It should be that the mouse itself is not proficient in sailing, so I can completely understand the route on the nautical chart. Costo said confidently. The seemingly distorted and abstract nautical chart with strange symbols was not difficult for him at all. So, is the island where the horse lives far from Coral Island? Judging from the nautical chart, the island is 130 kilometers north of Coral Island. With a flower speed of 5 knots, it would take about 14 hours to sail to Horse Island without encountering ocean currents and storms. Costo calculated with his fingers and replied. Liszt's mathematics was not bad. According to Costo's introduction, he estimated that the speed of 1 knot was less than 2 kilometers per hour. The speed of the flower was about 9 kilometers per hour. It was not as fast as riding a bicycle. He vaguely remembered that the narrowest part of the Taiwan Strait seemed to be only 135 kilometers. In other words, the distance between Coral Island and Horse Island was separated by the Taiwan Strait. Captain Costo, when can the flower set sail for Horse Island? Sir Lord, if it's just going to sea, the apprentice sailors are already competent. After all, Horse Island is not very far away and belongs to the offshore sailing range. However, the sailors are too inexperienced. Once they encounter a storm, they will not be able to deal with it, and the probability of an accident is great. If we go all out to train, how long will it take before we can go to sea? If Sir Lord can let me recruit 30 apprentice sailors and have them train every day, then within a month, I can make the flower set sail to Horse Island. Liszt made a decision in an instant. I will let Advisor Gort fully cooperate with you. 1 month later we will set sail to Horse Island. Give the island a name, Black Horse Island. Costo said excitedly, I am willing to serve Sir Lord. Imprint this nautical chart and then erase the picture on the cave wall. After this was done, the flower returned. At night, it had become accustomed to summarize the day's work at the castle's dinner party. Liszt was not a stingy lord. He did not mind his subordinates freeloading in the castle. This was also a way to rope in people. Sir, if the clues left by the rats are true, we must control Black Horse Island as soon as possible to prevent it from being occupied by other forces. Then, as soon as possible to obtain military merits, get in fiefment, and make Black Horse Island a fief of the Lord. Warhorses are more important than any other resource, Marcus said solemnly. Since there were many uninhabited islands in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Lord who had rendered meritorious service could designate an uninhabited island as his fief. Before he was enfeoffed, all the uninhabited islands in the Azure Waves Sea belonged to the Sapphire Grand Duke in theory. He could choose to operate it secretly. This was an unspoken rule. Once the Grand Duke chose an uninhabited island as a fief to enfeoff to a certain lord, he must immediately give it up. However, it was rare to see someone secretly managing a deserted island. Firstly, the nobles did not lack land for farming. What they lacked were elves and metals. Secondly, it was difficult to guarantee that the news of the island's management would not be leaked. Once the business reached a certain level, it was inevitable that the Grand Duke would forcefully enfeoff the island. In theory, all the products on the island would be transferred to another lord. Therefore, it was not worth it to sneak into a deserted island. For example, the Tulip family had reclaimed the Coral Island for 20 years, yet 1/3 of the land was still uncultivated wasteland. Before List came to Flower Town, a large part of it was also uncultivated. As of now, there were still many places that were uncultivated, not to mention the Thorns Ridge that was yet to be developed. The news must be blocked, and all those who know the news must be given a serious warning. Otherwise, Black Horse Island will inevitably be seized by other lords. Gort said in an equally serious tone. He and Marcus were well aware of the importance of warhorses to the aristocracy, especially warhorses with excellent bloodlines like Black Dragon. On the battlefield, it played a vital supporting role for the knight's strength. It could be said very intuitively. When charging on the battlefield, an elite Earth Knight riding a horse might not necessarily be able to beat an ordinary Earth Knight riding Black Dragon. Then the news is limited to everyone here as well as Costo, Rome, and my manservant Thomas. List readily accepted the advice. When the sailors finish their training, they and their families will move directly to Black Horse Island to live. Of course, first of all, we have to see what kind of environment Black Horse Island is. Gort said optimistically, Black Horse Island, which can raise a horse like Black Dragon, must be a flat green island. I think it must be large enough to accommodate an earl. List cut a piece of World of Warcraft meat, swallowed it, and said casually, no matter how big it is destined to be my island. Advisor Gort, you have to actively cooperate with Costo on the training of sailors. Try to satisfy him as much as you can. I understand. The Black Dragon horses of Black Horse Island began to secretly prepare for the attack. The logging team was still working with great fanfare. Hundreds of people were collectively cutting down trees. Limited by tools, individual efficiency may not be high, but overall progress was very fast. In just 5 days, about 1/3 of the trees in the northern Thorns Ridge had been cut down. A large area of thorns around the pier had been cut down, leaving only a few wild fruit trees. It would take about half a month to complete the new smoke mission, so it was useless to be anxious. Since Gort became an advisor, his enthusiasm for work had soared and he had taken too much initiative, causing List to have nothing to do most of the time. Therefore, domesticating Blessed Curls became his current research topic. Blessed Curls' feathers gradually hardened, and the magic power in its body gradually became abundant. If it wasn't for the chains on its feet, it would have learned to fly. Old Grandet, on such a large coral island, you really can't find even a single eagle tamer? Sir Lord, I have asked the people of the flower caravan to inquire in various cities and even small towns. There are indeed no craftsmen who can domesticate eagles. Old Grandet, the captain of the flower caravan who came to the castle to report, replied. Continue to inquire. Yes, Sir Lord. After sending Old Grandet away, List rubbed his forehead. Although Blessed Curls' quack and quack sounds were very annoying, it was, after all, a World of Warcraft that had been raised since childhood. It would be a pity to kill it and eat its meat. However, List didn't worry about Blessed Curls for too long. The servant who took care of the Black Nightshade returned to report the good news. Master, the Black Nightshade sprite worm has been born. Quickly rushing to the Black Nightshade field, List saw a black and shiny Black Nightshade sprite worm, which looked like a black gem. It was very interesting. With a simple lure of jade powder, the Black Nightshade sprite bit List's finger, successfully forming a contract. His 9th sprite worm had finally moved into the castle. Chapter 139. The arrival of the serfs made the fief's officials very excited. There was a shortage of manpower at the moment. List was also ready to go to the Coral City to hand over the 500 serfs. Although the weather at the end of summer and the beginning of autumn was still a bit hot, the sun was not so scorching. Wearing the symbol of aristocracy, he could still endure it. Now he no longer had to ride a horse. The castle had just purchased a brand new four-wheeled carriage. The servants carefully decorated it, inserted a flag on the roof, embroidered with a purple-black tulip. The tulip family had their own flag, which was a bright red tulip. It was the family's first tulip worm, a tulip species. Unfortunately, the tulip worm only evolved into a sprite before dying of old age. The current tulip sprites were bred from the tulip magic ingredient. Liszt was no longer an official member of the tulip family, so the red tulip flag was no longer suitable to be used. He chose the black tulip as his flag. The flags of the flower caravan and the thorns caravan were all black tulip. On the Coral Island, this was probably already familiar to everyone. When they saw the black tulip flag, they understood that it was the Count's third son, the Baron of the flower town Liszt, who had recently been in the limelight. Black tulip. This was the name of the brand new carriage. The coachman was One-Eyed Barton. There were not many horses, so his workload was very light. He could also go to the Coral City to see the world. Master, according to your instructions, I picked the healthiest black nightshade, dug it out along with the soil and put it in a pot. You see, its fruits are cyan and there are also ripe black ones. The old lady will definitely like it. Very good, water it and put it in the carriage. Liszt gestured. The black nightshade worm originated from the black nightshade raised by Madame Penelope. Therefore Liszt got a pot of black nightshade for the old lady. Courtesy demanded reciprocity. At the same time he could also show off his abilities. Who asked this old lady to always dislike him, just because he was a little handsome? Master, are you going to take Dosen with you? Take Dosen around. He is now my loyal guard. The Earth Knight is no match for him. Liszt said proudly. He was very satisfied with Dosen. The bloodline fruit did not go to waste. It could now release a few rock spikes at the same time. At one time it could release 6 rock spikes at once. Summing up the opinions of Marcus, Gort and the others, everyone agreed that the current Trembling Woods was a mid-ranked magic beast. Trembling Woods might be relatively weak among mid-ranked magic beasts, especially when compared to the purple sand crocodile that could crush the Coral Island Knights, but it could only be regarded as a rookie. But intermediate World of Warcraft was intermediate. Of Warcraft. It went beyond the shackles of low-level World of Warcraft and could release 2 kinds of magic, rock thorns and multiple rock thorns. Moreover, it still had room to grow. At the very most, it was only 7 months old. Maybe after a period of growth, it would understand more magic. With Dosen he could basically walk sideways on Coral Island. Carter looked at the majestic Dosen and said with a smile, "It's good to take it away so it doesn't always revolve around stupid woman." Mr. Marcus said that stupid woman is almost pregnant. They are not suitable to mate together again. Indeed, Dosen is growing now. It can't be empty. Liszt said seriously. In addition, for stupid woman, from now on, nutrition should be provided. If it is determined that she is not pregnant, then cut off the supply and wear down her fierceness. This is necessary. After being hungry for so many days in a row, she could only eat once in a while, and after eating she would be raped by Dosen. Stupid woman's life was quite painful, and her fierceness was worn down little by little. Seeing the arrival of Liszt and others, she no longer chose to roar, only fear remained. No matter how clever World of Warcraft was, it was only a kind of beast. The method of boiling a frog in warm water could make stupid woman fear Liszt and others. Even if she regained her strength in the future, she would not dare to resist Liszt and others. Just like a lion in a circus, it was whipped by the keeper since childhood. It dared neither escape nor resist, and it had no demeanor of a king of beasts. In view of stupid woman's quick attitude, Liszt got a lot of inspiration. He gradually had a vague idea and was ready to use it on Blessed Curls. This wind peregrine falcon was getting fatter and fatter. It was time to suffer a little. The clothes were put on and the carriage was ready. Gort also rushed over with Isaiah, Blair and Rome Wine Barrel. They were accompanied by several clerks who were going to receive the serfs together. At the same time Marcus also rushed over. "My lord, don't you need the night squad to follow?" "No, Teacher Marcus, the logging team's work is equally important." It was a simple farewell. The convoy set off. Despite having the strong physique of an Earth Knight, Liszt still felt much more comfortable in a carriage than on a horse. The windows on all sides were open and the wind blew all the way. The jolting and shaking of the carriage almost made him fall asleep. During this period, Dosen also wanted to get on the carriage to feel comfortable, but Liszt kicked him off. A dog doesn't run with the wheels of a carriage but wants to ride? Outrageous. In fact, the main reason was that Dosen was too big. When he got into the carriage, Liszt was squeezed so much that he had no place to stretch his legs. Moreover, his weight was close to 800 kilograms. When he got on the carriage, the 2 horses pulling the carriage were tired and panting. After leaving the Thorns Ridge Road, they entered the common dirt road of Coral Island. It was very dusty. After running with the convoy for a while, Dosen turned into dust. Liszt hurriedly put on his mask and pulled down the curtains of the windows. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, the convoy smoothly arrived at Coral City. Advisor Gort, take Blair and Isaiah to discuss the handover with Mr. Frank. I will first visit my grandmother. As you wish, my lord. Separated at this point, the carriage continued towards the independent small castle at the edge of Coral City. When the servants in the castle saw the black tulip flag fluttering on the carriage, they understood who had arrived. The butler quickly led the servants out to welcome them. Young Master Liszt, I am so happy to see you. Where is grandmother? The old madam is in the castle, chatting with Miss Lavera. Earlier today Miss Lavera came to the castle to accompany the old madam. Elder sister also came? Liszt was not surprised, because he saw a carriage with a flag with a special design parked at the castle gate. It was Lavera's carriage. The design of the flag was of her own design. It was said to be an abstract combination of a hot spring, a bird, a tulip and a dame, but Liszt really couldn't see it. As he entered the castle, he said to the serving man Tom, take good care of Dosen, don't let it hurt people. Understood, master. Tom looked a little nervous while holding Dosen's leash. Taking care of Dosen before was Thomas's job. Today Thomas had to follow Liszt closely, so Dosen fell on his head. His strength couldn't restrain Dosen, so he could only barely maintain it. Fortunately, Dosen had been trained to be very obedient. As long as Liszt didn't let it wander, it wouldn't wander. Chapter 140. Grandmother, you have a pair of eyes that can see through everything. Liszt smiled. The shady dealings between him and Levis were not particularly hidden, and it was not difficult for people to find out. At least the Count knew about their slave trading plan. As long as the Count wanted to know about Coral Island, he could find out at any time. Lavera looked at the increasingly outstanding list and was very dissatisfied. Liszt, the flower caravan seafood business has reached my Falcon Town. Then I must congratulate Big Sister. The citizens of Falcon Town will be able to eat delicious seafood. I will organize my people to fish for seafood. Although you and Levis have monopolized the seafood market, the other lords will also organize their people to fish for seafood. Your good business will not last long. Liszt sat in a chair, not minding Lavera's provocation. The seaside towns, of course, can fish for seafood on their own. They have the right to do so. But Coral Island is so big, not every town is next to the sea, and not every beach is rich in seafood. In fact, the flower caravan no longer had to work hard to catch seafood. They directly cooperated with the lord of the seaside town, letting the town lord catch seafood, and then the flower caravan would buy it and sell it to the city. Each town had different seafood specialties. The flower caravan had the most complete variety of seafood, which could be bought at a low price and sold at a high price. When the aristocrats and civilians of Coral Island gradually got used to the seafood on the table, the income had risen from the original estimate of 3 gold coins a day to 4 gold coins a day. Excluding the dividends paid to Levis and the consumption of the caravan, they earned more than 3 gold coins a day. With the seafood market, Liszt was enough to join the ranks of Coral Island's rich. This was a windfall that made people jealous. Lavera was jealous, but she also understood that Liszt had the confidence. He had already fed Levis. On the Coral Island, the words of 2 people were the most useful, the Count and Levis. The Count was Levis's father, so he obviously would not rob his son's business. Levis also got a share and issued a seafood license. Now no one could snatch away Liszt's windfall profits. She had no choice but to change the topic. Why did you come here so early in the morning? I'm here to bring flowers to Grandma. Liszt smiled and said to his valet Thomas, go get the potted plants from the carriage. Yes, master. Not long after, Thomas brought in a pot of nightshade. So it's a black nightshade. Madame Penelope suddenly understood. This is the black nightshade I gave you. Did you take good care of it? No, it's not the same one I gave you. Is that black nightshade dead? How pitiful, it still couldn't escape the fate of withering. Grandmother, don't be sad. That black nightshade is still alive and well, and it's very healthy, much healthier than normal black nightshades. What do you mean? Madame Penelope signaled to her servant to put the black nightshade on the balcony. If you have something to say, just say it. Liszt, don't talk to me with such a tone, it reminds me of Melissa. I have convinced myself that you have the shadow of your father, even though you have Melissa's face. Madame Penelope's resentment towards Melissa was still deep. Liszt had no memory of his mother, nor did he know what kind of tone she used when she was alive. However, he could guess that his words were somewhat deliberately mystifying, or perhaps there was a sense of alienation that was not close enough. This was something that couldn't be helped. After all, he wasn't the original Liszt and couldn't invest too much in it. Therefore, he continued to smile. The black nightshade you gave me wasn't sick, it was just gestating a sprite worm. Now the black nightshade sprite worm has been born. When the news of the sprite worm came out, Madame Penelope and Elvira were taken aback. Madame Penelope was sincerely happy. She had already forgotten her dissatisfaction with Liszt's deliberately mystifying tone and praised her grandson. Knight Liszt, you are the luckiest one in the tulip family. Take good care of the black nightshade sprite worm, consider it my gift to you. I am very moved by grandmother's gift. For your birthday this year, I will prepare an elaborate gift for you. Liszt expressed. Seeing that Elvira was about to speak. Liszt, who had no interest in the Chinibu girl, got up. Grandmother, I have an appointment with Mr. Frank, so I won't be staying here any longer. I hope to have lunch in the castle. Go, lucky boy, I will have the kitchen make your favorite omelets. Mr. Frank. Baron Liszt, you look more mature, but you are still as handsome as before. Frank, whose hairline was almost at the top of his head, had an ugly red nose. My Shirley has graduated from Oxhorn Academy and returned. As soon as she came back, she said that she wanted to see Big Brother Liszt. Little Shirley is back? Liszt thought for a while before remembering that little Shirley was Frank's youngest daughter. In his childhood memories, little Shirley was his little attendant. Because they were only 1 year apart, they could play together. But later Liszt went to Knight Academy, while little Shirley was sent to Oxhorn Academy by Frank, and they never met again. As for Oxhorn Academy, it was located on Ironhoof Island. Ironhoof Island was the fief of Marquis Bull. He belonged to the Sapphire Grand Duke, and his ancestor was Sapphire Grand Duke's favorite youngest son. As soon as he came of age, he was conferred the title of Count Bull. After the founding of the country, Ironhoof Island became his fief and he was promoted to a marquis. Marquis Bull's family established Oxhorn Academy to train maids for the court. Gradually, aristocrats, big and small, sent their daughters to Oxhorn Academy to study. Aristocratic young ladies with Oxhorn Academy education were very popular among aristocratic marriages. Because these young ladies learned etiquette, needlework, housework, music, reading, writing and so on, they were considered to be cultured. Of course, not all aristocratic young ladies went to Oxhorn Academy to study. Elvira had never gone there. Liszt didn't know if it was a misconception. Liszt always felt that Frank was always talking about little Shirley, as if he was promoting him. I have probably become a hot young unmarried aristocrat on the island, Liszt thought. However, he didn't have any thoughts about little Shirley. In his memory, little Shirley was a fat girl. After promoting for a while, seeing that Liszt didn't respond enthusiastically, Frank gradually returned to the main topic. Your officials and servants are taking inventory. 500 serfs were gathered in 2s and 3s on an open space not far from the port. Looking at their appearance, most of them looked sick. Liszt didn't know if they were sick or seasick. Gort and others, along with clerks, counted the number of serfs and calculated the ratio of men to women, as well as the number of craftsmen. After a rough count, they quickly returned to Liszt's side. Sir, there are a total of 476 serfs. On the side, Frank casually explained. The serfs were transported back from a faraway place, so it was inevitable that some of them would get sick or not acclimatized to the climate. The fleet initially purchased 510 serfs, but lost 34 of them. He sighed in his heart. Liszt nodded in agreement. He knew very well that the sale of serfs was bound to be accompanied by death. Chapter 141. Of the 476 serfs, women accounted for about 2/3. There were also many infants, children and elderly people. The number of able-bodied men was very small. In the serf trade market, able-bodied men were regarded as excellent labor force and were much more expensive than the elderly, children and women. In the eyes of a lord, the quality of these serfs was very poor. Apart from craftsmen, women and children were burdens, and craftsmen were also elderly, which was extremely uneconomical. However, Liszt did not complain in his heart. Women could marry the fief's bachelors to offset the imbalance between men and women in the flower town. Children and infants could be candidates for future knight once they were nurtured. Old craftsmen had superb skills and could cultivate a large number of apprentices. Of course, Able-bodied men were equally important to the flower town. Whether it was farming, road repair, or dock repair, they all required able-bodied labor. Therefore, on the surface, List still complained, "Mr. Frank, the quality of these serfs is not very good. I need women by name, so a little more is not a problem. However, there are too many children and the craftsmen are all elderly. Aren't you trying to fool me?" "Oh, Baron List, I dare not fool the Tulip family." Frank laughed. This batch of serfs was gathered by the fleet from the various serf markets. The able-bodied labor force has long been bought by others. You know, without war there will be no good serfs. So, now that the fleet has set sail again, I should be able to buy good serfs, right? The Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom is at war with the Eagle Kingdom. Father and the others have also gone to the battlefield. Frank's eyes moved. You still want to continue the serf trade? Oh yes, the seafood market has brought you a lot of gold coins. Mr. Frank is well aware of the earnings of the seafood market, isn't it? List did not complain about being poor. After all, the other party had been helping Levis collect dividends. I will gather a sum of gold coins as soon as possible. I hope that the fleet can bring me another batch of serfs. There should be no problem. The Tulip fleet always goes to sea to do business. Now that the war has begun, the serf business is easier to do. So, how many serfs are you going to buy? 1,000, including 200 craftsmen. 1,000 serfs, according to the market price, cost 240 gold coins. In the past, the serf business was not good, so I could accept the higher price. But now, during the war, serfs are still so expensive. I can't accept it, Mr. Frank. Regardless of war or not, the serf business is always full of risks. After a round of bargaining, in the end, the price was set at 210 gold coins. List took out the gold coins that he had saved up during this period of time, as well as the money from moving the caravan, and handed them to Frankel. The smile on List's face was no longer as gentle as before. He would have to live in poverty for a period of time, and the feeling of his empty wallet was unbearable, especially after he had gotten used to spending lavishly. He refused Frank's invitation to have lunch with him on the pretext of, "Little Shirley really wants to see you." Instead, he had lunch in Madame Penelope's castle. Lady Mary of Tulip Castle also sent a servant to invite him, but he did not go. He was not familiar with Lady Mary. Vera also stayed here. At the table, she kept asking List, "Your flying dust dog has grown so big, give it to me, how much gold coins do you want?" What an international joke. Although Dosen did not release magic and others did not know its abilities, they could tell that it was extraordinary just by looking at its body. This could not be measured with gold coins. List responded very coldly, "Dear sister, the first person Dosen sees when it opens its eyes is me, and it recognizes no one but me. Even if you use dragon coins, it will not be recognized. Give up this stupid idea." Hearing the word stupid, Olvera's face became gloomy. "You are becoming more and more arrogant. You even dare to disobey your sister's words." With a knife in his left hand and a fork in his right, List calmly cut the steak. "I am just telling you a fact, please remain rational." Madame Penelope seemed to appreciate List's current domineering transformation, and she rarely spoke up for him. "Olvera, please eat like a lady, don't always think about snatching something from List's hands. If you want, you can choose a suitable husband from among so many outstanding nobles, and he can satisfy everything you want." "Grandmother, you don't love me at all now. You have all grown up, my little girls and boys. Grandmother is about to go senile. I only hope that you 3 siblings can live in harmony, take care of Lytton, and let the bloodline of the Tulip family flourish." The lunch was not very harmonious. After the meal, Olvera angrily pulled out her sword and stood in front of List. "Fight with me like a warrior, I want to prove that you are still the cowardly List." Not waiting for List to respond, Dosen, who was lying lazily on the side, suddenly broke away from Tom and rushed towards Olvera. His momentum was like a tiger going down the mountain, roaring in a low voice and stirring up a gust of wind. At that moment, cold sweat instantly dripped from Olvera's face. She felt herself being shrouded by a strong murderous intent. It was a kind of murderous intent that could only be experienced in the face of an irresistible force and when one's life was at stake. Just like when she was 7 years old, she used a whip to whip a wild horse, and the wild horse fiercely rushed towards her and opened its mouth to bite her. The difference was that she was now an Earth Knight, and similarly powerless to resist. "Come back, Dosen." List gave an indifferent command, and the charging Dosen suddenly braked, no longer rushing forward. But the Corium or dog's eyes still flickered with a fierce glint as it fiercely stared at Olvera, as if it would pounce on her at any time and swallow her whole. It is the world of Warcraft of the Thorns Ridge. Although it has recognized me as its master, its ferocity is not that easy to get rid of. Sorry for scaring you, I still have something to do, I have an appointment. Dear sister, let's talk next time. With that he smiled. Holding Dosen's hand he left the castle. Ulvera's complexion was ashen. She foolishly stood in place and didn't continue to put on a brave front. Just now when Dosen pounced on her she was really scared. After all, she was just a flower in a greenhouse. On the castle's balcony, Madame Penelope was watering her new black nightshade with a kettle. No doubt, she clearly saw the scene that happened at the castle's entrance. She just muttered, "That's right. A girl should act like a girl and a boy should act like a boy. Melissa and Mary, these two bitches, are not lacking in childbearing skills." List didn't fool Vera. He indeed had an appointment, or rather he needed to find someone. He went straight to a small town near the Coral City. Looking at the dilapidated appearance of the town, he frowned slightly. "Rome, is it here?" "Sir, it's here, Mosstown. I have been to this town before." Rome Winebarrow replied. "Whose fief is this town?" "It used to be a baron's fief. Later it went bankrupt and was taken back by Sir Count. It has never been given out." Chapter 142. Who are you looking for? The wooden door of the small building opened, and a youngster dressed in black, with messy hair and sunken eyes poked his head out. Looking at the group of people and the huge dog in front of him, he asked cautiously, "Does Mr. Glanny live here?" Thomas stepped forward, maintaining good etiquette, and asked gently, "Our master, the son of the Earl of Coral Island, Baron List Tulip of Flower Town, wants to see him and ask him some questions about magic." "I'll wait a moment." The youngster froze for a moment before closing the door. A moment later, the door was fully opened, and the youngster revealed his thin, shriveled figure. "Teacher, please go in, the others wait outside." List nodded. "You stay outside." "Sir." Rome wanted to say something. List waved his hand at him. On Coral Island, even the mysterious wizards had to give face to the Tulip family. Entering the small building, a strange smell drilled into his nose. It was not the kind of stench one would find in daily life, but the smell of some kind of chemical. He couldn't help but frown. The room was a bit dark and he could see all kinds of messy equipment. Some were metal utensils, some were jade and crystal utensils. There were a lot of bottles and jars, and there was even an iron bottle burned with candles with green juice boiling inside. The strange smell was probably coming from it. The room was very messy, and even the places to walk were not suitable for walking. "Teacher is upstairs, he is waiting for you." The youngster was a bit wooden. He looked at List with only the nervousness of a stranger, not the fear and trepidation of an aristocrat. It was probably because he had followed wizards for too long that he had lost his reverence for aristocrats. An important reason why wizards were unpopular was that this group of people who believed in knowledge disregarded the authority of aristocrats, believing that knowledge was the only truth in the world, rather than the power that aristocrats believed in. The stairs creaked, but as they rose, the light became brighter and brighter. Then List saw Granny Truth, a magician in his 40s with a hooked nose, blue eyes and brown hair. He was shrouded in a loose cloak. He was sitting in a chair reading a book. When he saw List, he closed the book and placed it on the messy desk. List's eyes were very sharp. He could clearly see that the cover of the book was written with the words, "Speculation on the Alchemy of Iron," dedicated to His Excellency the Great Sorcerer Den Baba Truth. There was also a picture drawn at the bottom. It's a triangle with an eye in it. "Baron List, compared to your brother, Viscount Levis, you look more like a graceful noble." Glanny stood up. He was even taller than List. Under the cloak he was also skinny. His voice was hoarse as if he had not spoken for a long time. "Mr. Glanny, have you met my brother?" "Of course, I've worked with Viscount Levis a few times." "Please take a seat, I don't pay attention to the hypocritical aristocratic etiquette here." List found a relatively clean stool. "Aristocratic etiquette is not hypocrisy, it's cultivation." Granny sneered. "Cultured, are you talking about how to eat humans in a more cultured manner? If you have to understand it that way, it's fine." List was somewhat disgusted by Glanny's attitude. He was used to being respected as a noble, but what the other said was quite reasonable. This world is not a dog-eat-dog world. The environment here is not so good. Of course it can't compare to a castle. I'm just a little mage. My energy and financial resources are all used to explore the truth of the world. Exploring the truth of the world was the slogan of mages. All mages would abandon their secular surnames and uniformly change their surnames to Truth. As for the triangle and eye on the book, It was called the Eye of Truth. Mages found that the triangle was the most stable structure, and the world was also made up of triangles, matter, spirit, and magic. And they were the eyes in the triangle, endlessly exploring all the truth. Can I ask how to release magic? There is no difference between magic and qi. As a knight, why should you care about magic or qi? It's all about the control of magic. Well, let's change the subject. How many mages are there on Coral Island? Liszt asked casually. Apart from a small purpose, he came to visit the mage today because he was curious. Asking Levis is better than asking me. I can only tell you that there are only 3 mages in Coral City who have contacted me. Do you mages not often gather and communicate? The path of exploring the world is lonely. Magic is the embodiment of truth. Only by listening quietly can you understand the knowledge it wants to tell you. Liszt asked a few more questions. Until Glanny became irritated. Baron Liszt, did you come to visit me just to ask these ignorant questions? If so, please leave immediately and don't waste my time. My time is dedicated to the great truth, not chatting with you. Of course it's not just to ask questions, I also want to cooperate with you. Spit it out. If he had not inquired about Glanny's temper from Gort beforehand, Liszt felt that this disrespectful guy should be dragged out and fed to Dosen. Of course Dosen might not necessarily eat it. It liked to eat cooked food, or it needed to be barbecued first and sprinkled with cumin. Have you helped Tulip Castle or other aristocrats forge magic equipment? You need me to help you forge magic equipment? Glanny became a little interested and his tone calmed down. There is absolutely no problem with my skills. Even your father has asked me to repair a few pieces of magic equipment. Liszt was also straightforward. He took out a fist-sized black pearl from his bosom and placed it on the table. Do you know what this is? Black pearl, you also have this thing? Have you seen a black pearl? Of course, Levis has also brought black pearls to forge magic equipment. This should be a specialty of your tulip family, right? Compared to the white pearls of Blue Dragon Island, it has more abundant magic and is calmer. It is a good way to make a fortune. It turns out that the black pearl magic equipment in Levis's hands was also made by you. In that case, I will not beat around the bush. If this black pearl is bigger and has more magic power, can you make it into a magic equipment that can suppress storms on the sea? How big? Liszt was careful and gestured the size of a basketball. This big black pearl, how about it? Glanny frowned and thought for a moment. I need to see the real thing to judge whether it can be forged and enough to suppress storms. But I think as long as the quality is up to standard, the manufacturing process is not a problem. I am a mage with 20 years of practical experience in magic runes and arrays. In magic practice, a magic apprentice was equivalent to a trainee knight, a mage was equivalent to an earth knight, an archmage was equivalent to a sky knight, and a magic shooter was equivalent to a dragon knight. Chapter 143. The real thing is in my castle. After all, it is a valuable item. If you accept the cooperation, you can go to Flower Town. Liszt did not trust wizards. He did not have enough strength. Relying on the name of the Tulip family alone might not be enough to suppress the other party. In case the other party ran away with the black pearl, there would be no place to find it. Glanny shook his head. Do you think it is so easy to forge a magic equipment? If your black pearl is really big enough and good enough, then you will need more materials to forge it into a suitable magic equipment. In a countryside like Flower Town, you can't even buy the leftover materials. I have 2 caravans. Whatever materials are needed, they can be shipped back in time. Liszt did not mind others looking down on Flower Town as a countryside. With a tiger in his heart, he naturally had a superior mentality. Besides, Mr. Glanny, don't you want to hear what I can pay? Oh, how much are you willing to pay? Levis asked you to forge the black pearl magic equipment. How much will you pay? Tell me the truth, I can ask Mr. Frank at any time. Well, aristocrats are really cunning. I can't fool you. Viscount Levis paid 3 gold coins, which is purely for the manual work. He sent the leftover materials. But his black pearl is only this big. You have such a big black pearl, the price will not be so cheap. In fact, I have no gold coins. No gold coins? Glanny stared. Baron Liszt, are you kidding me? Liszt said lightly, but I have the black pearl, don't I? Glanny's eyes quickly lit up. Oh, you are going to use this black pearl to pay for it? You think too much. Do you know how much a black pearl is worth? This black pearl is worth at least 200 gold coins. With so many gold coins, I can hire a great wizard to help me forge a magic equipment. Liszt tossed the black pearl in his hand. Of course, it is not very difficult for you to earn it. The black pearl was obviously attractive to Glanny. He licked his lips and said, "Tell me what you want. First, help me make a black pearl that can suppress storms. You will provide the materials for the edges. Second, teach me magic and provide me with knowledge and books. Third, I have a few crystals. Help me make crystal lamps. The rest, the remaining value of this black pearl, will be my financial support for your search for the truth." For list, the value of the black pearl itself was not high. On the Coral Island, apart from Levis, no one was willing to buy it. "You want to learn magic?" Glanny was a little surprised. "This is not the style of you nobles. Moreover, magic and battle aura repel each other, yet you want to give up your noble status and become a magician? Chi refines one's own mana, while magic absorbs mana from the outside world." Although they were both magic powers, they would repel each other in terms of cultivation. It was not that no nobles had ever tried to cultivate magic, but it was very difficult to succeed. This was just like how magic required the mind to maintain rationality and clarity at all times, but Do-Chi required the mind to be hot-blooded. If one practiced both magic and martial arts, they would have a split personality. List said, "I just want to understand the principles of magic release." As the soul of a modern civilization with scientific literacy in the 21st century, he naturally had a strong desire to learn about this different world full of magic power. He had already come into contact with and cultivated Chi, and his understanding of Chi was quite profound. However, he knew nothing about magic. Getting close to magicians and understanding magic was what he had always wanted to do. The construction of his territory was on the right track, and he had the strength to protect himself. He could learn more about the outside world according to his own ideas. "It seems that you are an aristocrat with exuberant curiosity. In that case, I will accept this black pearl." Glanny thought for a moment and agreed. "I hope you will have a good time in the flower town. Oh, by the way, there is a house for you to live in the flower town. You can transport the materials and equipment you need to the flower town through the flower caravan." "I don't intend to stay in the countryside for long. I will come back after I have forged the magic equipment and taught you what magic is. The moss town is only a quarter of an hour away from the Coral City. The prosperity of the city is so lingering." He went to the window and looked in the direction of the Coral City in the distance. In his eyes, a city piled with feces was a symbol of prosperity. With a glance, he saw a group of people waiting outside the small building as well as the huge Dosen. "Is that your pet? A World of Warcraft flying dust dog? Why is it so big? In my memory, no flying dust dog can grow so big. Because it eats well." Magician Glanny Truth needed time to prepare before he could rush to the flower town. List returned with his people first. Meanwhile, in the direction of the Coral City near the Tulip Castle, in a small 2-story house with a garden, Frank had just finished his afternoon nap. He went downstairs to the living room and sat down on a chair. The servant immediately served tea. He was an aristocrat, a lord knight, and had his own fief, a small village. Compared to a bankrupt and destitute noble like Gort, his fief was still considered wealthy. Every year it brought him a surplus of a dozen or so gold coins. Coupled with his salary as Levis's tutor, he lived a happy life. Madam and young lady have yet to return from their stroll in the sea of flowers? They have returned and are enjoying the shade in the small garden. After a while, his wife and daughter returned to the house. "Frank, are you awake?" The middle-aged woman wore a fashionable round skirt. Despite the heavy makeup, it still could not change the fact that she was gradually aging. "Are you going to do something for the Tulip Castle in the afternoon? Shirley wants you to accompany her back to the manor. She left her clothes in the cupboard." Frank looked at his daughter. "I remember that you brought a lot of clothes, plus the clothes you bought on the Ironhoof Island. Isn't that enough?" "But I forgot to bring a black gown. I like it very much, Dad." Shirley swayed her thin waist. "Have the servant go back and get it. I don't have time, dear." Frank spread his hands, explaining to both his daughter and his wife, "Levis is still on the battlefield. I need to be in charge of the properties under his name. I also need to be in charge of the part of the authority given to him by the Count to govern the Coral Island. I understand now is a good opportunity for you to show your abilities, but I hope you can also take some time to care more about Shirley. She is already 15 years old. 15 years old meant that she had reached the age of socializing. Aristocratic girls were about to get married at the age of 16 or 17. Frank looked at his increasingly beautiful daughter and was very pleased. "Of course I know that Shirley is already a big girl. In fact, I was worried about her this morning. On the Coral Island, there are not many aristocrats suitable for Shirley. I hope she can get the best happiness." His wife suddenly became interested. What are you worried about? Who are you looking for her? Shirley also looked at her father expectantly. As an aristocratic lady, socializing was a necessary skill to learn, and there was no need to be shy when talking about marriage. Chapter 144. List. Frank uttered the name, Flower Town Baron Sir Count's third child. Surely you must still have an impression of him. You always played behind him when you were a child. Is it Brother List? Of course I remember him. Shirley blinked her eyes, and a slightly childish handsome face appeared in her mind. List was very handsome since he was a child. However, she had already left the Coral Island and went to the Oxhorn College to study for a few years. Due to the inconvenience of traveling by ship, she did not return home even during New Year's Day. Her impression of List had gradually faded. At that time she had not yet reached the age of admiring the opposite sex. Naturally, she did not have a clear memory of a certain companion. What do you think of List? Asked Frank. Shirley shook her head. Dad, I have only seen Big Brother List when he was 12 years old. At that time he was just a child. Now that he is an adult, I have no idea what he has become. You should find an opportunity to meet him. At this time Frank's wife asked, Sir Count does not seem to value List. His fief has been moved to the most remote flower town. List is indeed not valued by Sir Count. Sir Count relied on his determination to forge ahead and establish the Coral Island. He hopes that his children can move forward bravely, said Frank, but in any case he is of the Tulip family's bloodline and was enfeoffed upon reaching adulthood. This is not a treatment that an ordinary aristocrat's second son can enjoy. The Count is just Sir Count's benevolence. He is a dutiful father. Even Lavera was enfeoffed by Baron List, said the wife enviously. Lavera was very influential among the Coral Islands' aristocratic ladies. She was a hereditary dame, which was rare even in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The reason why Sir Count does not value List is that List is not talented and has a soft personality. But from my recent contact, List has been reborn. He is calm and dignified. He is becoming more and more mature. Sir Count even went to the flower town to celebrate the Going Out to the Sea festival, which is a sign. What sign? What other sign could it be? The sons have regained their father's trust. The Count is still in the prime of his life. Of course he wants to be with his sons and obtain more glory as a knight. Is that so? But he hasn't gone to the battlefield. Levis has. It's only a matter of time. He has the blood of the Tulip family and the Taro family in him. Frank felt that his wife had the narrow-mindedness of a small noble in the countryside, so he told his daughter directly, Surely, List has already prepared his own night squad. He bought a batch of equipment for the night squad from Tulip Castle. No compliment was as convincing as action. A country lord with a squad of night was naturally not ordinary. Shirley's eyes lit up. Dad, Mom, when can I see Brother List? I think I have the ability to judge for myself. Our Shirley is smart and beautiful. Of course she has her own vision. Daddy will find opportunities for you soon. His footsteps were unsteady. He was tired and hungry. Ivan wiped off the sweat on his forehead and looked at his peers with numb eyes, who also had the same numb eyes. Their clothes were dirty and smelly, their hair was a mess, and the dust on their faces could not hide their paleness and sallow color. It was hard to distinguish between men and women, old and young. Even the cries of the babies were weak. Hurry up if you don't want to be whipped, cheer up and keep up with the team. The clerk holding the whip shouted loudly. From time to time the whip would be lashed in the air, making crackling sounds. Ivan's whole body trembled. His slightly dizzy head suddenly sobered up, and his heavy footsteps could not help but quicken. Just a moment ago the person next to him was whipped by the clerk. His clothes were torn and he was in so much pain that he cried. Crack. There was another crack of the whip. Ivan lowered his head and clenched his teeth so that he could move faster. He was very afraid of the whip. When he was on the ship, his companion from the same town, who slept in the same corner as him, was whipped to death by the ship's first mate. The wailing before death had made him have nightmares for several nights. Inside the dream was a nightmare. In reality it was also a nightmare. He missed the days of hard farming on the island, although there was not enough to eat, and there were night whipping serfs who could not pay taxes. But most of the time he was free to walk around and chat with others. He even went to the town to take a look at the beautiful proprietress of the bakery. However, one day everything changed. He heard the knight shouting and killing, and then a group of bloodstained knight came to his village and drove them away. Some people did not want to go and were killed, Those who did not want to be killed could only follow them. It was on this day that he left his homeland and began a constant nightmare. He was taken to a market where serfs like him were being sold. He was locked in a cage eating some rotten black bread, muddle-headed. Serfs around him were constantly taken away, and new serfs were constantly locked in. Then he was also taken away. He followed a group of strangers onto a big ship. He could not understand the people on the ship and did not dare to speak to them. Unexpectedly, there was a person on the ship who knew him. They were from the same town. "It's the Sapphire people," his companion told him. He instantly thought of the legend of the barbarians. Every year there would be sea barbarians who came to the Eagle Kingdom to burn, kill, and loot. They were all from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The Sapphire people were on the ship and we were sold to the barbarians. The ones who caught us were mercenaries. They were more hateful than rats. His companion said resentfully, "I swear. One day I will come back, find these mercenaries and kill them all." Ivan did not answer. He was frightened by his companion's words. He had been farming since he was a child and he had never killed a chicken, because there were no chickens at home. Only the nobles killed serfs and serfs did not dare to kill people. Unfortunately, his companion was whipped to death soon after he made the oath. Ivan had no one to talk to, and continued to have nightmares that he could not wake up from. He had never been on a ship and he almost fainted. Today, a few days later, he finally set foot on land and came to a completely strange place. He could not understand a word spoken by the people here. He also did not know where he was being driven to. He was confused about tomorrow. He did not know what he was persevering for, and he did not even know what perseverance was. He just followed the whip and went wherever he went. He never thought about death and he did not know what joy there was in life. He did not know how many times his legs had become numb. He heard the clerk brandishing his whip and shouting something. He could not understand, but the team slowly stopped. When others stopped, he also stopped. Finally, he could rest his legs for a while. He saw others start to sit down. He followed and sat down again. No one spoke. Everyone on the ship was forbidden to communicate, and now they were used to silence. He looked up and his eyes fell on a female serf not far in front of him. She was preparing to feed the child. She lifted her ragged clothes, exposed her shriveled chest, and stuffed it into the baby's mouth. The baby sucked hard, not knowing if he could suck a little milk. If it was in the past, Ivan would have swallowed his saliva and greedily peeped at the woman's chest. He was still young and had never touched a woman's hand, let alone her bulging chest. But at the moment, the chest was unattractive, and he did not have the slightest thought to think about it. His stomach was so hungry that his intestines were about to be mixed together. The sun moved overhead and it was noon. P.S. Follow the official WeChat account Lamakes666. Chapter 145. Ivan sat on the ground and soon learned to lie down on the ground, resting as much as possible and recovering a little strength. He didn't know where he was going and how long he had to walk. Every sound. There was the sound of wheels turning. Ivan didn't get up, but slowly turned his head and looked in the direction of the sound in the most effortless way. He saw a convoy of carriages with a flag embroidered with purple-black flowers on a blue background. He recognized this flag, which was used to indicate aristocratic status. Of course, he didn't know which aristocratic family this flag belonged to. Just as he was looking at the carriages without any thoughts, the familiar sound of the whip rang out again. As if there were springs installed in his body, he subconsciously got up from the ground and stood properly. Not only him but everyone else did the same, getting up from the ground and standing properly shakily. The scribe raised his whip and shouted something in a loud voice. Ivan didn't understand. However, they soon understood. Someone used the wind language of the Eagle Kingdom and shouted loudly, "Everyone line up. Follow the instructions of the clerks. Line up behind each carriage. Don't talk, don't move, stand properly." Ivan began to panic a little. He didn't know how to stand in a line and had never stood in a line before. Seeing others move, he also moved. Then he was kicked in the buttocks. A clerk scolded him in words he didn't understand. It seemed that he found the confusion on his face. The clerk pulled him over, stuffed him behind a serf and scolded him again. Then he went to pull the second serf. The messy procession was quickly arranged into 6 crooked groups under the arrangement of the clerks. The sapphire man who knew wind language walked to the front of the line, talked with several people who looked aristocratic for a moment, and then faced the many serfs. "You have 2 meals a day, traveled thousands of miles to Coral Island, and are about to go to the place where you will live in the future, Flower Town." Ivan, like the others, looked numbly at the speaker and didn't respond. The speaker continued, The lord of the flower town, Sir Baron List of the mighty tulip family's bloodline, is also your master from now on. Remember the place where you will live from now on, the flower town. Remember your future master, List Tulip, the descendant of the mighty tulip family. The last few words were shouted out in a very imposing manner. However, the serfs below remained calm. The speaker didn't care at all. He waved his arms, his grizzled hair disheveled in the wind. Remember, from now on, you need to speak the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Of course, you are just a group of serfs. No one cares if you can speak serpentines or not. However, you need to remember the words Flower Town, Tulip, and Sir Lord. Now repeat these 3 phrases after me. He shouted, say these 3 words correctly, and you'll enjoy a wonderful lunch, understand? Lunch in an instant stirred up the silent and numb team. The hungry serfs couldn't stand the excitement of lunch. On the ship they only ate 2 meals a day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and then lay still. A courageous serf trembled and responded, understood, sir. Very well, now repeat after me, Flower Town, Flower Town. Louder, Flower Town, Flower Town. Ivan felt that he was so hungry that he couldn't speak, but for the sake of the upcoming lunch, he still stirred up the little strength left in his body and shouted along with the others, Flower Town. The word was not a mouthful. It was easy to learn. After shouting it a few times, he was even a little excited that he had learned a foreign language. Very well, it seems that you have mastered the word Flower Town. Next, repeat after me, Tulip, Tulip. Tulip, fool, don't tilt your tongue, repeat again, Tulip, Tulip. Louder, Tulip, Tulip. Although it is not standard, remember it here, everything on this land belongs to the Tulip family. Your lord is of the bloodline of the Tulip family. The person who could speak wind language continued to teach. Next, you need to understand how to express your loyalty when you meet your lord. You first have to kneel down. Several serfs, as soon as they heard kneeling down, immediately knelt down. The other serfs also knelt down. In an instant, all 6 teams knelt down. The speaker was shocked. He was not List and dared not let the serfs kneel down to him. He quickly dodged. Fool, I didn't ask you to kneel down now, forget it. You kneel down in front of the black tulip flag on the carriage as if you saw Sir Lord. Now repeat after me, Sir Lord. Sir Lord. Ivan knelt on the ground and shouted with the crowd, trying to straighten his tongue. After a few times, the person who could speak wind language ran to a nearby row of noblemen and said in serpentine, Mr. Gort, is this teaching okay? Gort, dressed in frac abier, nodded and said, that's all for today's pre-lunch teaching. Let the serfs fill their stomachs first. The flower town is not a place so poor that they can't even afford to eat. Old Granddad, it's been hard on you. I still need you to translate for the serfs in the future. Old Granddad said with a smile, it is Old Granddad's honor to serve Sir Lord. Then I will tell them to start eating. Immediately, he faced the serfs who were still kneeling on the ground. You can get up and continue to stand in your line. Now lunch will be distributed. One by one, everyone has a share, no looting allowed. Otherwise, the whip of a clerical petty official will not have eyes. Hearing Old Granddad's words, the uneasiness of the serfs quickly turned into a pleasant surprise. There was really lunch. Then, as the carriage opened, portions of food that they had never seen before were placed on plates of bread and handed to them. There were no cutlery such as knives and forks, only food and plate of bread. Ivan got his share of food. He recognized plate of bread. He used to use plate of bread. After a certain amount of time he could cook it and continue to eat it. On the plate of bread there was half a piece of black bread, and then there were many big and small, round and flat things. He couldn't help but reach out and touch it. It was very hard. But he didn't know how to eat it. Fortunately, he always did what others did. He saw that in addition to eating the black bread, some people had already opened it and eaten the soft things inside. So, he sat on the ground with the plate of bread and took a big bite of the black bread. Then he imitated others and opened it. It was very easy to open it because it had a crack in it. He could open it with his hands. His nose quickly smelled a very strange fragrance. After swallowing the bread, Ivan saw several people eat it in a row. He plucked up his courage and took a bite. It was very soft and almost melted in his mouth. He didn't know what it tasted like, but he felt it was delicious. He no longer cared about it and focused on eating his share. Perhaps he had been hungry for too long. In just a short while he had already eaten all the food. When the last shelled thing went down his stomach, it was almost the first time in his life. He felt what it meant to be full. At this moment Old Granddad's shout once again reached Ivan's ears. It seems that you have eaten your fill. What a bunch of lucky fellows. Remember this feeling. From today on, in the Flower Town, so long as you work hard for the great Sir Lord, you will be able to eat such food every day." Ivan heard someone exclaim next to him. He was also shocked. He could eat such food every day and eat until he was full. Chapter 146. On the second day after returning to the castle, the 476 serfs camped in the wild for the night arrived at Flower Town. After eating a few full meals, the serfs' complexions were still very poor, but at least in terms of spirit there was a great improvement. In the afternoon, the sun was setting in the west, and all the serfs lined up on the main road of Flower Town, waiting quietly. Riding on Black Dragon, Liszt, surrounded by the night squad, came to the front of the procession. Thomas held Trembling Woods by the hand and followed his every step. Now he would bring Trembling Woods along whenever he went out. It was quite an interesting scene of a man taking advantage of a dog's power. "Sir, the quality of this batch of serfs is very poor." Marcus glanced at them and frowned. "There are indeed very few able-bodied serfs, but there are a lot of children. They can be trained well and become knight candidates in the future," Liszt said simply. While talking, Gort came over to greet him. "Sir, the serfs have finally arrived at Flower Town, and none of them got lost." "Well done. Forget about the losses at sea. I don't want them to suffer any more losses on Coral Island. So, sir, should we start arranging for them to kneel and pledge their loyalty to you?" "Yes." When serfs saw the Lord, they needed to pledge their loyalty, which was a form of selling themselves as a slave. When old Grandet received Gort's instructions, he immediately faced the serfs and shouted in wind language, "Lowly serfs, the great bloodline of the Tulip family, the Lord of Flower Town, is standing in front of you. Now kneel and pledge your loyalty to Sir Lord." In an instant, the serfs knelt on the ground and shouted in the newly learned Serpentine, "Sir Lord." It was not neat, but the voice was loud. The shouts of nearly 500 people, even if they were just a group of ragged, tall and short, emaciated, old and weak serfs, still had a bit of momentum. Liszt was already accustomed to such a scene. In the Flower Town, people kowtowing to him happened every day. Therefore he just looked at the group of serfs with a smile on his face. The serfs kneeling on the ground buried their heads deep in the ground, not daring to look directly at their future master. After a while, Liszt, who had prepared his lines, opened his mouth. "I accept your loyalty. From now on, you have become a part of the Flower Town. Work hard for me, and you will receive my protection and live a stable life." After saying that, he looked at old Grandet, who acted as the translator. Old Grandet understood and translated, "Sir Lord has accepted your loyalty. Sir Lord has told you that from now on, you will become a part of the Flower Town and work hard for Sir Lord. Then you will get Sir Lord's protection and live a stable life in the Flower Town, understand?" "Understood. Yes. Thank you, my lord. I will work hard." The serfs responded sparsely. Many of them still didn't know what to say and just knelt. Seeing this, Liszt said, "Old Grandet, let them rise." So it was. The short serf reception ceremony came to an end. Liszt didn't stop and returned to the castle. Marcus continued to lead the night squad back to the Thorns Woods to guard the logging team. Gort and the other officials started to get busy. They had to arrange the lives and jobs of the 476 serfs in a short time. Fortunately, many wooden houses had already been built in the fief and the settlements. There were also many wooden houses in the unfinished commercial district, workshop district, and residential district that could provide temporary residences. There was no shortage of food. There might not be much bread and vegetables, but there was enough seafood. Even if there wasn't enough, the oyster settlement's fishermen would have enough to go to the sea a few more times. "We need to complete the distribution of serfs as soon as possible. The autumn harvest is coming," Gort said loudly. "The census of resources has yet to be completed. There are too many serf women, children, and the elderly. The original arrangement plan is no longer suitable. We need to make adjustments." Isaiah responded. Blair watched as the serfs squeezed into the wooden houses and prepared to spend the night. He said with a smile, "Children and breastfeeding women should be put aside for the time being. As for the other serfs who can work, it would be better to send them to the Thorns Ridge to carry timber, carry stones, and be responsible for repairing roads." Gort interrupted, "This is not a responsible distribution plan. What I mean is that we should not make arrangements for the time being. We should wait until the census of resources is completed before making overall arrangements." "Well, this is also a good idea. It is indeed difficult to make arrangements in a short time, but we can't keep them in vain. We can just send them to the logging team." At the banquet, Gort conveyed Blair's suggestion to Liszt. List approved of it and added, "Arrange for craftsmen to do some light work as much as possible. Don't arrange for the weak or sick serfs to do any work. Let them rest well." Among the serfs he valued craftsmen the most. Craftsmen's skills were the world's technology and an indispensable part of a prosperous fief. Suddenly he thought of something and said, "You should rest a little later tonight. First, make a list of craftsmen, especially what skills they have mastered. I will have the castle servants help me record it. I hope to see them tomorrow morning." Nowadays, List's words were law in the flower town. The next morning after he got up and walked the dog, a thick bast paper list was placed on the dining table. After taking a bath and changing into loose clothes, he sat at the dining table, ready to enjoy breakfast. It was time for Carter to order the footman to bring breakfast. A cup of fragrant fresh milk, a pineapple bun and milk-flavored bread, a fried egg, a large piece of fried World of Warcraft meat, a vegetable salad and a few fruits. This was his standard breakfast. It was worth at least a dozen silver coins, especially the World of Warcraft meat, which was very valuable. But who told him to be rich recently? As the Coral Islands' invisible tycoon, he didn't want to be wronged. It had never been his style to work hard and live simply. If he could enjoy it, then he would. He picked up the milk and took a big gulp. The castle's milk is still better. I feel that the flower town's climate and environment are definitely suitable for raising cows. He licked the milk foam at the corner of his lips and made his own judgment. Sherlock has already bought 3 calves. Now that the pasture is occupied by horses, it is impossible to raise more cows, master. List said firmly, "Once the Thorns Ridge is developed, the dairy farm will definitely expand, at least double in size. I want to raise more cows." Because the milk tea was getting better and better, he had specially investigated the dairy farm. He didn't find any reason for the improvement in the quality of the milk produced by the cows. At least, it wasn't due to the fact that the cows had entered pregnancy and compared to the milk of the cows outside. He could clearly feel the difference in the taste of the milk. The milk of the Flower Town's dairy farm was not only fragrant, but also more refreshing. Later, List speculated that it might be due to feeding them a new breed of corn grass. As a result, after feeding them separately, he found that it had nothing to do with corn grass. Therefore, he believed that the Flower Town's climate was suitable for raising cows. He took a bite of the pineapple bun. Chapter 147. Outside of farming, commoners with a technical nature were called craftsmen. Commoners among craftsmen who relied on their skills to run their own shops could be called craftsmen. Therefore, craftsmen were mostly freedmen while craftsmen were mostly serfs. According to List's understanding, after a period of development, these people would become bourgeois if they engaged in their own business. However, through his understanding of the society of a different world, it was impossible for craftsmen to evolve into capitalists for the time being, as the aristocracy would not allow it. Take Earth's medieval Europe as a reference. With the progress of the Industrial Revolution, craftsmen who grasped the means of production would either accumulate the means of production and evolve into capitalists, or lose the means of production and be reduced to workers. Here, craftsmen had existed for a long time and they were still craftsmen. There were no capitalists and there were no large numbers of workers. No matter how they developed, they were still vassals of the aristocracy. The cultivation of qi and the absolute disparity in individual strength allowed the aristocratic knight to firmly grasp all the power without fear of being revolutionized by the new class. Of course, the development of craftsmen in different countries and different cities was more or less different. There was no fixed division of levels. List summed it up simply. Craftsmen could be roughly divided into 4 levels: master, craftsman, and worker. Master, technician, master. Craftsmen of this level generally lived in big cities. They were freedmen with high status and had reached the level of lesser aristocracy. For example, architects, shipbuilders, carters, goldsmiths, jewelers, blacksmiths, drillers, and so on were all top craftsmen in their respective industries. Architects were responsible for building castles, large buildings, mage towers, and so on. Shipbuilders were responsible for designing and building ships. Carters were responsible for producing carriages, mining carts, and chariots. Goldsmiths forged gold, silver, copper, and even dragon coins. Jewelers designed precious jewelry, carved crystals, jade, and even gems. Blacksmiths could make all kinds of excellent equipment, and drillers could dig mines. On the Coral Island, there were only architects, shipbuilders, carters, and blacksmiths. There were no goldsmiths, jewelers, or drillers. Craftsmen. Craftsmen of this level were the backbone of craftsmen and also the most basic social class in the various large cities. They filled all walks of life and were the cornerstone of the prosperity of cities and territories. Most of them were free citizens and could choose to run shops or sell their crafts. Stonemasons, carpenters, blacksmiths, cobblers, and tailors were the 5 most basic professions for craftsmen, and also the 5 professions with the largest number of people. Masons build buildings, carpenters make furniture, blacksmiths forge tools, cobblers tan leather goods, and tailors make clothes. In addition, there are also bone craftsmen, paper craftsmen, thick bast paper, locksmiths, shoemakers, cooper craftsmen, crystal craftsmen, jewelers, gem craftsmen, jade craftsmen, soap makers, winemakers, bakers, barbers, cooks, sugar makers, spices makers, and salt makers. Worker. Craftsmen of this level were also the backbone of craftsmen, but they existed on a large scale in the manner of the Lord. Most of them were serfs, almost no different from farmers who worked in the fields. They were only engaged in slightly skilled work. Embroidery workers, spinners, dyers, salt workers, sugar workers, grinders, miners, sailors, boatmen, handymen, and so on were all workers. In addition, merchants such as hotel owners, peddlers, grocery store owners, and horse dealers did not possess craftsmanship, but were responsible for the circulation of craftsmanship. Their status was generally equivalent to that of craftsmen, that is, ordinary free citizens. Finally, family everyone. At this level they could not be considered craftsmen but rather artists. Novelists, bards, pianists, painters, court musicians, sculptors, singers, and so on, most of them belonged to the aristocratic class. They did not have titles to inherit, so they developed their own artistic cells, wandered among the aristocracy, and enjoyed a high quality of life. If one had to continue to define them, a wizard who could make magic equipment and an iron knight, who could make a variety of weapons, were also considered craftsmen. But they were either outside the system or they were aristocrats. There are no technicians and there are very few craftsmen. Most of them are workers. It feels like the money spent is a bit of a waste. Looking at the thick bast paper Liszt in his hand, Liszt thought regretfully. What he wanted was actually craftsmen, but the serfs he bought were basically workers. Obviously, this batch of craftsmen were leftovers from other people, or it could be said that Levis's subordinates were only willing to buy cheap craftsmen. In the serf market, the price of a craftsman was obviously a bit more expensive than a worker, let alone a technician. No one would sell technicians, craftsmen, workers, and farmers at the same price. In any case, with a group of skilled workers, I can barely add a few industries to the flower town. I can make sugar, soap, weave, and even dry salt and seawater, make paper using indigenous methods, or develop other industries. Liszt comforted himself. It could not be considered a comfort. Skilled workers were still very valuable. He asked Thomas to bring a quill, ink, and blank thick bast paper, and he began to write and draw. He was going to calculate how many industries these craftsmen could develop and how many workshops could be added to the town's workshop area. But as he wrote and wrote, he studied from the development of handicrafts to the social system. If I want to, I can become a sociologist. He divided the social system of the other world into categories. The upper class of society, aristocratic lords. The middle and upper class, wizards who pursue the truth, officials without titles, knight and indispensable artists. The middle and middle class, technicians who master irreplaceable skills, mercenaries who work as knight. The middle and lower class, servants in the castle, craftsmen who produce technology, merchants who circulate goods, workers who work as coolies, and rats who walk in the dark. The bottom class, serfs who farm, beggars who have not even become serfs. It's very clear, it's clear at a glance. He took a big bite of World of Warcraft meat, chewed and swallowed. If I can further elaborate on the responsibilities of each social class in society, as well as the mobility of social classes, I can probably write a great book on sociology and publish it. This was just an idea. He had not yet fallen to the point where he needed to write books to earn a living. That was something only the children of aristocrats would do. Moreover, sociology works could not be sold. To write a book he had to write a night novel. To slay a dragon, to contract the elf king. It was best to start with a prince in dire straits with a little elf. He would wander the sea and have a romantic night with the singing demon. After a few days of flirting with the noble women in the Marquis manor, he would kill an evil dragon alone or ride a dragon. The little elf would then break through to become an elf king. In the end, the hero saves the beauty and marries the beautiful princess recognized by the unicorn. With these elements, it was basically a best-selling night novel. Those young people who loved fantasy were very willing to buy it. After breakfast. Chapter 148. Glanny Truth's letter was delivered to the castle by the flower caravan's transport team. List delayed his arrival. The materials to forge the Black Pearl magic equipment were lacking, which required some time to prepare. He would probably go to Flower Town in mid-October. What a waste of my time. I should have asked another wizard to visit. List was not very happy when he saw the letter. He felt that the wizard did not give him face. It took more than a week to prepare the materials. List's efficiency was too low. He suspected that the wizard was perfunctory. However, there were not many wizards that he could come into contact with. This kind of creature always lived in seclusion and did not easily come into contact with ordinary people. If List was not a member of the Tulip family, perhaps Glanny would not have met him. Probably the aristocrats would not let the wizards settle in their city. They would always make an explosion from time to time to scare people. List threw away the letter. List no longer paid attention to when Glanny would come. Currently, the resource census and the logging war were being carried out in Flower Town at the same time. Although Gort worked hard as an advisor, there were still a lot of things that annoyed List. He had his own troubles. Standing in front of the window of the castle, he frowned as he looked at Blessed Curls, whose feet were chained. Squawk. Squawk. Blessed Curls continued to make noises, constantly shaking its wings that were full of feathers. The sapphire pupils turned into a whirlpool. List cast magic eyes. In his eyes, Blessed Curls became a fat bird made of cyan magic. Blessed Curls has already reached the stage of releasing magic. In a few days, I'm afraid that he will be able to release magic on his own without my guidance. Eating too well is also a kind of burden. Should I adjust his diet? This bird's meal is equivalent to 3 tons of food for the servants. Blessed Curls was not big. When nested it was the size of a dog. But it was still a World of Warcraft, and its appetite was far greater than that of an ordinary bird. It is not worthwhile to feed it like this. If he couldn't find an eagle tamer, Blessed Curls would forever be a wild and untamable monster in World of Warcraft. Its greatest use was to kill it for meat and sell its materials for gold. Shaking his head, List decided not to kill it for the time being. After taking care of it for so long, they were already familiar with each other. No matter how he teased it, Blessed Curls wouldn't bite him. It just dodged because it didn't like people touching it. There is still friendship between us. Life in Flower Town was busy and orderly. Gort presided over the census of resources very quickly. The information was gathered and sent to the castle. Heated discussions began during the banquet. According to Sir's instructions, the serfs in the town will be converted into full-time workers. The farming serfs will receive interest-free loans from the castle. The loans will not go through the hands of the serfs, but will be directly handed to the serfs in the form of farming tools, and the serfs will be instructed in scientific farming. Gort recited the long speech he had written with great emotion. The resource census was a political achievement project that he had presided over, so of course he was full of passion. At present, the results of the Flower Town's resource census are as follows. Peanut settlement, 100 mu of peanut field with a peanut sprite worm, 20 mu of corn field, 500 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly weeds, 20 mu of housing area. Shiitake settlement, 80 mu of shiitake shed, 30 mu of mixed shiitake and flame mushroom greenhouses, 800 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs, 30 mu of housing area. Barley settlement, 50 mu of barley field, 50 mu of oat field, 150 mu of naked wheat field, 30 mu of corn field, 50 mu of corn field and a corn sprite worm. 500 mu of uncultivated land, mostly covered with weeds, 1,800 mu of beech, some of which had fragrant coconut trees and 50 mu of housing area. Wheat settlement, 500 mu of wheat field with a wheat sprite worm, 1 pig farm with 12 fat pigs, 300 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly weeds, 50 mu of housing area. Tomato settlement, 80 mu of tomato field with a tomato sprite worm, 20 mu of vegetable field, 40 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly weeds, 60 mu of housing area. Oyster settlement, 4,600 mu of beech, some of which are fragrant coconut trees and a fragrant coconut sprite worm. Fruit-stealing monkey farm, 7 fruit-stealing monkeys, 3 of which are pregnant females. Housing area covers 30 mu of land. Dairy farm, 150 mu of alfalfa pasture with 11 cows, 3 of which are pregnant females. 180 mu of thorns forest with a thorn sprite worm. 300 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs. 1,700 mu of beech with some fragrant coconut trees. 15 mu of housing area. Flower farm, 200 mu of tulip field, 15 mu of which are Sundance tulip, 10 mu of which are William I tulip, 20 mu of which are black tulip, and the rest are wasteland. 500 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs and weeds, 20 mu of housing area. Town, 40 mu of commercial area, 80 mu of workshop area, 150 mu of serf residential area, 120 mu of freeman residential area, 80 mu of aristocratic residential area, 10 mu of administrative office area. Most of the land occupied by houses was planned, and the land occupied by houses was very small. Castle, 120 mu of alfalfa pasture with an alfalfa sprite worm, 22 horses, 7 of which are pregnant females, 5 mu of black nightshade field with a black nightshade sprite worm, 20 mu of castle, 400 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs and weeds. The town's arable land was about 5,165 mu, the beach was about 8,100 mu, and the buildings were about 775 mu. Including rivers, ponds and roads, the town had a total of 15,000 mu of land. As for the standard for this mu, List wasn't clear on it as he lacked comparison. If his body had transmigrated here, he could easily understand the weights and measures here with himself as a reference. Unfortunately, his soul had transmigrated. It didn't matter whether he was a giant or a dwarf compared to his past self, as he was already accustomed to the units of measurement here. The flower town has an area of about 15,000 mu, the Thorns Ridge has an area of about 13,000 mu, which adds up to 28,000 mu. This is the area of my territory. Oh, I also have to count the 5,000 mu of beach exposed at low tide, so I have 33,000 mu of land. The town with an area of 33,000 mu was already a relatively large town on the Coral Island. He also took the time to draw a detailed topographic map of the flower town. The map was certainly not standard, but the basic framework should be correct. There were mountains and rivers and the road was clear. His gaze wandered around the map and soon he looked at the northern side of the Thorns Ridge. From here there are only low shrubs and further out, there are large areas of unreclaimed wasteland. Should I enclose this area as well? After thinking about it he gave up. Swallowing the Thorns Ridge was already greedy enough, and it was better to make a fortune in silence. Being greedy to swallow another piece of land was likely to backfire and cause the Count and Levis to be unhappy. The wasteland of the flower town has not been reclaimed yet, so I should first develop in a low-key manner and steadily. I have a smoke mission so there is no need to take risks. It is still the same old principle: accumulate food, build high walls and slowly become king. I am 16 years old this year, so I have set a small goal for myself. When I am 20, I will have my own island. Information about the Black Horse Island emerged in his mind. Chapter 149. Mission completed. Reward: wood variant, fast-growing variety of thorns. The slowly changing smoke in front of List's eyes made him feel at ease. From the start of the World of Warcraft until mid-October, after nearly a month of logging, the logging team finally cut down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge. The once not-so-lush but still verdant forest had completely turned into a barren undulating slope. If there was an environmental protection organization here, they would definitely express a serious protest to List. The destruction of vegetation and soil erosion were crimes against humanity. Unfortunately, this was List's territory, he could do whatever he wanted. Besides, the Coral Island was verdant. What was the big deal about cutting down a few trees? With sprites in this world, there was no need to fear desertification. Moreover, there was no industrial development here. Whether it was the island or the mainland, no matter how barren the land was, at least 70% of the area was covered by forest. At least 95% of the area was covered by vegetation. Whether it was farmland or weeds, there would be no lack of plants. Therefore, List never paid attention to environmental protection. Wood variant? What does that mean? This was the reward of the Thorns Worm Chain mission. Previously, he was rewarded with spiky variant and poisonous variant thorns. Spiky variant and poisonous variant were easy to understand, but now the wood variant was a bit troublesome. Wood variant? Does it mean the quality of the wood? His clever brain worked quickly. There are differences between trees. Some trees are suitable for making furniture, but they are outrageously expensive. Some trees are even despised for making paper. Wood variant, fast-growing variety of thorns, does it mean that the wood attribute of thorns has changed? Ordinary thorns, apart from being used as hedges, were not of much use. They could neither blossom nor bear fruit, nor were they very hard. They were of little value. I can't figure it out. I still have to see the real thing, then study the fast-growing wood thorns to determine its value. In the blink of an eye, Liszt had already named the new variety of thorns. At this time, the smoke in front of him changed into a new chapter. Mission: the Flower Town's business district is gradually flourishing, but the workshop area has been idle for a long time. There are not enough workshops to support it. How can craftsmen be wasted on cutting down trees and farming? Please build 3 new workshops to increase the town's prosperity. Reward: Chi bottleneck. Liszt's eyes widened. He saw the strange reward of bottleneck of Chi. However, he wasn't surprised at all, only pleasantly surprised. My first mission reward was the advancement of my Chi, allowing me to smoothly break through from an apprentice knight to an earth knight. This time it's the Chi bottleneck. Does this mean that I'm about to become an elite earth knight? That must be it. Referring to the basic, intermediate, advanced and dragon battle Chi divisions, the knight is divided into trainee knight, earth knight, sky knight and dragon knight. The earth knight could be roughly divided into 2 stages: ordinary earth knight and elite earth knight. The earth knight who had just broken through were all ordinary earth knights. During this period of time, the total amount of Do Chi in their bodies would slowly increase. Liszt was at this stage. He could feel his Chi growing every day. When the total amount of Do Chi reached its peak and no longer increased, it meant that he had reached the level of an elite earth knight. At this stage, it was difficult to increase the total amount of Do Chi by simply relying on training. Many knights were trapped in this stage and could only continue to develop the technical use of Do Chi. As they grew older, around 50 years old, their body functions would decline, and the total amount of Do Chi would gradually decline. They would degenerate from an elite earth knight to an ordinary earth knight. Today Marcus was approaching 40 years old, and his body functions were still at its peak. In another 10 years, it would probably degenerate and his strength would be greatly reduced. This was the reason why he was eager to make meritorious service on the battlefield. Meritorious service should be done early, and only when he was old could he enjoy it. Half of the elite earth knight had the same idea as Marcus: make meritorious service. However, some elite earth knight were not in a hurry to make meritorious service. They hoped to continue to improve their strength, such as Levis and Olvera. However, simply relying on training was not very useful. At this time, a large number of potions were needed to stimulate the body functions and continue to increase the total amount of Do Chi, until the quantitative change caused a qualitative change, and break through to become a Sky Knight. A Sky Knight could easily beat up 100 Earth Knights. If there was a good mount, it would be a killing machine on the battlefield, constantly gaining glory. After this mission is completed, I will officially enter the elite Earth Knight stage? Liszt still couldn't believe it. Originally, I thought that it would take at least 3 to 5 years of training to enter the elite Earth Knight sequence. I didn't expect that in just half a year I would complete this process. The more he thought, the more excited he became. It was as if his whole body was emitting the light of a genius. Building 3 new workshops in the workshop area is too simple. Currently, there are 6 workshops in the workshop area: a blacksmith shop, a leathersmith shop, a mill, a carpenter shop, a tailor shop, and a locksmith shop. According to the current number of craftsmen serfs, I can build a soap workshop, a wine workshop, and a hooped barrel shop. In the soap workshop, there was a soap maker, Bernal, who came from the small Kerchief Island. Not only could he make soap, but he also took over the soap, pancreas, manufacturing arranged by Liszt. Although he had not yet completed the final soap formula, he had already made a barely usable soap. A soap workshop was his reward. In any case, it was to make money for Liszt. In the brewery, among the craftsmen who also came from the small Kerchief Island, there was a brewer named Frank Distiller's Grains who could make fruit wine. There were also 2 serfs who could make rice wine and beer. Currently, Liszt had a good relationship with the heir of the Hops family, Aubrey Hops, and they often kept in touch by letter. He was able to obtain relatively cheap hops and brew his own beer. If he didn't seek to make money and just wanted to produce and sell his own beer, then a brewery could barely be maintained. In the hoop barrel shop, among the craftsmen serfs he bought, there were quite a few hoop barrel craftsmen, which was a common craft that combined carpentry and blacksmithing. Barrels were indispensable in daily life. Therefore, after the hoop barrel shop was built, sales would not be a problem. Even if there was no task, he would still build the hoop barrel shop. I just don't know if the hoop barrel shop can be considered a workshop. It should be a handicraft workshop, right? Liszt was a little puzzled. He couldn't distinguish between a hoop barrel shop, a tailor shop, and the like. If it doesn't count, then I will build another workshop. Sooner or later it will have to be built. A peanut processing workshop. Boiled peanuts, spiced peanuts, fried peanuts, salt and pepper peanuts, soy peanuts, peanut butter, anything that can be produced will be produced. The flour town should not directly sell primary agricultural products. The value of primary agricultural products was too low. At the very least, primary agricultural products should be processed before being sold. Chapter 150. At this stage, apart from a few shops opened by freedmen, the flour town's workshops and shops basically had to be opened by Liszt. In any case, there were not many freedmen. Liszt did not mind monopolizing all the industries in the flour town. After all, this was his territory. If he said to build a workshop, then the workshop could be built. But Gort had doubts. Sir, the soap workshop can be handed over to Bernal, the wine workshop can be handed over to Frank, Berdain and Huntella, the hoop shop has many hoop craftsmen. What does the peanut processing workshop do, and who do I need to hand it over to? It is to simply process the harvested peanuts. The peanuts can be boiled together with the shell, stir-fried and sold separately. The peanuts can be sold separately or made into peanut butter. Perhaps some unique peanut flavors can also be developed. In short, ordinary peanuts have to be made into delicious peanuts. Just like how ordinary bread has to be made into pineapple buns. Who will make the delicious peanuts? Among the serfs I bought, there are some who have served as cooks in foreign castles. My castle does not need so many cooks for the time being, so let these people study how to make delicious peanuts. Remember this, Advisor Gort. Please speak. The price of the agricultural products produced in the flour town is very low and does not have the value to be traded. But after we process them, they can be sold at a good price. We can even buy agricultural products from outside and process them. I hope that the flour town can become a processing center for agricultural products. There were no words like initial processing in the serpentines. Liszt could use the serpentines to form a word with a similar meaning, and then give a little explanation. Gort could understand. This is the same as Tulip Castle rarely selling the whole tulip magic ingredient, but rather making the tulip magic ingredient into a finished magic ingredient, and then selling it, right? You understand correctly. Then I will arrange it now. After Gort left, Liszt also quickly left the castle. He hurried to the thorns wormstock thicket to look for fast-growing wood thorns. Standing in the thicket as far as the eye could see, other than the thorny thicket, there was only a barren slope in the distance. The fast-growing poisonous brambles and the fast-growing thorny brambles were separated by people, each occupying a large area. My lord. The two worm protection team members guarding the thorns wormstock hurriedly stepped forward to greet him. He was a serf from the dairy farm. Due to his strong physique, he was selected by Rome as a worm protection team member and received a well-paid part-time job. Liszt asked, "Did you find any unusual thorns when you were stationed in this bush?" He specifically asked Luomu to instruct the insect protection team here to pay more attention to the growth of the thorns and immediately report any special thorns. The team member hesitated for a moment. "Sir Lord, I don't know if those are unusual thorns." "Oh, what's the situation?" "There was a patch of thorns, they became very thick." "Very thick? Take me there." The insect protection team member quickly brought Liszt to a patch of thick thorns. The color and spikes of the thorns here were just ordinary thorns, but each one was about twice as thick as the average thorns. This was clearly different, and the insect protection team member didn't even know if it was unusual, let alone report it. He was simply a pig with a brain. Of course. Commoners indeed had limited IQ. Liszt expressed his understanding and said, "Cut off these thorns." The insect protection team did not have any iron equipment, only relatively cheap bone weapons. They hurriedly pulled out their bone knives and slashed at the thorns. Small shrubs like thorns were not difficult to cut down, not to mention they were still in their infancy. The insect protection team member was full of confidence, thinking that he could cut off the thorns with a single slash and perform heroically in front of the Sir Lord. However, the awkward thing was that when the bone knife hit the thorn's trunk, it made a crisp bang sound and bounced off, leaving only a very shallow mark. The two insect protection team members were a little flustered, waving their bone knives again and slashing vigorously. But every time they slashed at the thorn's trunk, they could only leave shallow marks. After a dozen slashes in a row, they could not cut out a crack the width of a thumb. On the contrary, their bone knives had already collapsed. It was about to break. "Stop, Thomas. Hand them my night sword and let them cut with the night sword." Liszt's eyes lit up. He roughly understood what kind of mutation the fast-growing wood thorns were. He took the night sword. The insect protection team member continued to slash, but still could not cut it quickly. Fortunately, the knight sword was made of fine steel and was very hard. Relying on constant slashing and grinding bit by bit, they finally cut off the thorns that were as thick as a wrist. Then he chopped off the small branches and chopped them into a bare thorny pole. Panting, they handed it to List. Holding the thorny pole in his hand, List could feel the weight of this wooden pole. Very heavy, very strong, and very hard. If I'm not mistaken, its wood mutation is likely to be in the direction of ironwood. Ironwood, as the name suggests, was wood as hard as steel. Many woods on Earth were known as ironwood. Like iron, birch, clamwood, nanmu, and so on, they were even harder than steel. They sank in water, and insects and even nails couldn't penetrate them. Many ships, vehicles, special buildings, and even aerospace parts used ironwood as a material. The current fast-growing wood thorns were not up to the standard of ironwood. However, its fast-growing characteristic determined its value. Even if it was not up to the standard of ironwood, it was still far better than ordinary wood and was better than steel. According to this quality, the fast-growing wood thorns are simply steel that can grow by itself. It was not that there were no ironwood quality trees in the thorns ridge, such as rockwood, stonewood, and so on. However, their number was very small and their growth was slow. It would take hundreds of years for them to mature. The value of fast-growing wood thorns that could mature in a short period of time was so great that even List found it hard to imagine it. The previous mutation of poison and thorns is simply incomparable to the current ironwood. This is the treasure of the thorns, my thorn sprite worm. Good job, I'll give you an extra meal tonight, eat as much jade powder as you want. This was the reward of the thorn sprite worm's chain mission, which was affected by the thorn sprite worm's worm stalk. He increasingly felt that there was a chance of success for the thorn sprite worm to evolve into a thorn's lesser sprite. I've decided. His mood surged and he could no longer hold back his thoughts. I'll plant fast-growing wood thorns in the 180 mu of shrubbery directly affected by the thorn sprite worm stalk. Ordinary fast-growing thorns, fast-growing poisonous thorns, and fast-growing thorny thorns should either be transplanted elsewhere or cut down. They shouldn't occupy the influence of the thorn sprite worm stalk. Black Dragon galloped. It returned to the castle like the wind. He immediately planned to call the newly appointed administrative officer, Isaiah, to replan the thorn sprite worm stalk shrubs. However, after his brain calmed down, he immediately thought of a key problem. The thorn sprite worm is still accumulating the power to evolve, and the chain mission is not over yet. There should still be room for the fast-growing thorns to mutate. It would be very difficult to produce new mutations if he cut down ordinary fast-growing thorns. Chapter 151. The discovery of fast-growing iron thorns was as important to Flower Town as adding a catalyst to a chemical reaction or injecting an athlete with a stimulant. Although he still had to wait for the thorn sprite worm chain mission to be completed before large-scale planting could begin. But this did not prevent him from bringing back the trunk of the fast-growing iron thorns. At the banquet, he would convene the town's officials to study and explore its use. If it can grow to 2 meters high, then it can be used to build houses. It is much harder than the fir we use. I bet that a house built with it would be safe and sound in a storm. Blair, your consideration is not comprehensive. Wood must not only be strong but also waterproof, moth-resistant, and rot-resistant. I don't think that my consideration is not comprehensive. You see, the wood is very compact, which is similar to the rockwood cut by the logging team. Rockwood never has worms. Blair retorted. The rockwood he was talking about was a tree called rock tree, which liked to grow in rock crevices. Rockwood was very precious. A 200-year-old rockwood could be sold for 50 silver coins. After cutting down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge, only less than 10 rock trees were found. Among them, only 3 were 200-year-old, while the other 7 were less than 200 years old. Similar to rockwood, there was also stonewood, which was also extremely rare. Gort thought of an idea. We can sink it into the water. If it sinks, it means that it is similar to rockwood. If it doesn't, it means that it is not good enough. That's right, let's give it a try. Thereupon, a servant brought a basin of water. He laboriously removed a section of the trunk and threw it into the basin. The trunk sank directly to the bottom of the basin. Upon seeing this, Blair proudly said, "Look everyone, I never lie. Fast-growing iron thorns are as good as rock wood." Marcus, who had always been taciturn, also said, "The texture is solid and the trunk is straight. It is suitable for making the spear shaft of a knight's spear. It can also be made into arrow shafts. It should be more suitable than birch." Ordinary knight spear shafts and arrow shafts were made of birch wood. The birch city on the Coral Island specialized in planting birch trees and producing birch wood needed to make weapons. The Tulip family also had a birch sprite. If it's really better than white birch, we can supply it to Tulip Castle. I believe the Earl will like better spear shafts and arrow shafts. In particular, it can reproduce quickly. This advantage is simply incredible. A rock tree that has been growing for 200 years is only as thick as a palm. This is just a seedling, but it's already as thick as a wrist. It's like I'm looking at a bush of gold coins. Haha, it's a tree that bears gold coins. Who would have thought that the most useless thorns would become the most useful wood? The banquet was filled with cheers and laughter. Everyone was looking forward to the future of the fast-growing iron thorns. List waited for everyone to finish their discussion. He raised his glass and said in high spirits, "For the time being, we can't be sure that it's a money tree. You can continue to pay attention to it and research it to fully unearth its value. If it really is a money tree, it must be planted on a large scale. It would be best to plant fast-growing iron thorns in areas that cannot be reclaimed in the thorn's ridge." Everyone raised their glasses and shouted, "As you wish, my lord." After the banquet, the slightly tipsy List took a walk in the castle's manor, played with Dosen for a while, and then went back to the study to read. Recently he was preparing to learn a foreign language, Wind language, the language of the Eagle Kingdom. At present, Flower Town only had old Grandette, who traveled extensively and knew both Serpentine and Wind language. Therefore, he temporarily handed the flower caravan over to Harpagon. List himself returned to Flower Town and served as a translator, coordinating the officials to manage the 476 new serfs, while also taking care of teaching Wind language. Mastering a foreign language was still somewhat useful. However, old Grandette was busy and had no time to teach alone. Therefore he gave List a notebook from when he was learning Wind language in his early years. This notebook recorded the more everyday Wind language and how to pronounce it in Serpentine. Learning was boring. At first he felt that it was interesting, but after 2 days he lost his patience. As he passed by the worm room, he went in and teased his sprite worms. 9 sprite worms were packed in a large box. It was like raising silkworms, but this batch of silkworms were colorful and contending with each other. He reached out and touched them one by one. The appearance of the sprite worms was very smooth and felt good to the touch. Some were lazy and motionless, some were energetic and wandered around, including the thorn sprite worm. The gray-white thorn sprite worm was not beautiful. It was the most inconspicuous among the group of sprite worms. But looking at it now, he felt that this thorn sprite worm was a bit out of the ordinary. The stimulation of alcohol made his brain slightly slow. He paused for a moment and then suddenly, "Fat, the thorn sprite worm has become fat. It is obviously bigger than the other sprite worms. This is a sign of evolution." Tulip Castle raised more than 100 sprite worms. He played with sprite worms a lot when he was a child and even witnessed 2 sprite worms break through into sprites. The biggest change in the sprite worm before the breakthrough was fat. This phenomenon was usually called the fat pupa stage. Unlike butterflies, sprites do not metamorphose, they directly become fat. In the process of becoming fat, the sprite worm will slowly decay in age. If they are unlucky, they will directly die of old age and turn into ashes. If they are lucky, one day the sprite will burst out of the skin, break out of the pupa, and fly. Fat pupa stage. List was completely sober from the drunkenness. Tension spread all over his body, mixed with apprehension and surprise. The fat pupa stage was certainly a sign of evolution, but it was also a sign of death. The sprite worm would not last too long in this period, at most 1 or 2 months. There was no third option if it did not succeed or die. There is only 1 or 2 months left. I am afraid that the thorn sprite worm chain mission cannot be completed in such a short time. I must help it. The fat thorn sprite worm slithered around in the box without stopping for a moment. From time to time, it raised its head and looked at List with its sesame-like eyes, expressing affection. But at the same time, List could feel that there were bursts of restlessness in its emotions. Perhaps this was its desire and impulse for evolution. It had already influenced 4 kinds of mutated thorns. There was no detailed information to explain the influence of sprite worms on plants, but List was convinced that it was definitely related to the emotions of the sprite worm. During this time, the thorns were very violent and continuously mutated. How can I help it? Provide it with nutrition and fertilize the worm stalk every day? Expand the area of the thorn shrubs. I feel that these are common means to help with evolution. They are effective but not decisive. The probability of evolution is more about luck. Adequate nutrition to a large extent could breed a sprite worm, but adequate nutrition could not guarantee that the sprite worm could break through. After thinking about it, the only thing that could really help the thorn sprite worm was the smoke mission. The thorn sprite worm chain mission must be completed as soon as possible. First of all, the current chi bottleneck mission must be completed. Starting tomorrow, I will personally supervise the construction of the workshop. He had made up his mind. List put down his nervousness and looked at his sprite worm with a smile, especially the thorn sprite worm. The fateful moment had come. Little guy, come on. As if sensing List's encouragement, the thorn sprite worm raised half of its body, and its sesame eyes looked at List in high spirits. Chapter 152. Sir, why are you in such a hurry to build the 4 workshops? I want to see the results soon. In the open space of the workshop area, List led Dosen to inspect the construction of the workshops. Gort, who presided over the construction, was puzzled. Just this morning, List issued a new order to completely build the 4 workshops within 5 days. For this reason, he had to summon more serfs to participate in the construction. The whole construction site was in full swing. Now that it was autumn, the temperature was gradually not as hot as it was in summer, but they were still sweating when working. Tell the construction workers that as long as the construction is completed within 5 days, their salary will be doubled, and if the construction is completed within 4 days, their salary will be tripled. List didn't care about a few copper coins, he only cared about whether he could complete the task ahead of time. Oh my God, the serfs will go crazy. Gort exclaimed and then spread his hands, but it is impossible to build the workshops in 4 days. Workshops are not wooden houses, they need skilled people to build them. List said indifferently, then make it simple as long as it can be produced. I don't expect the workshops to bring me much revenue. It's good enough that they can guarantee the supply to the castle. The level of the serfs could not be overestimated. But the serfs' pursuit of money should not be underestimated. If they went crazy, they could work day and night and toss the 4 workshops out. The quality might not be guaranteed, but List did not pursue quality, he only pursued speed. Even if the defective workshops were built, it didn't matter as long as the task was completed. Compared to the evolution of the thorn sprite worm, these were secondary. Gort did not understand List's thoughts, but he was only an advisor, and all the power in the territory was given by List. He could only accept it. I will stimulate these serfs. I can't guarantee 4 days, but within 5 days, there will definitely be 4 workshops appearing in the workshop area. After completing this task, Advisor Gort, I will reward you with a few bottles of gin, which can be purchased directly from Tulip Castle for cellar aging. Oh my God, cellar gin, it's so mouth-watering. I haven't drunk Tulip Castle's cellar gin for several years. Haha, I will not sleep or rest for the next few days to supervise the workshop. Please rest assured, sir. He corrected the attitude of the officials and the workers. List then held Dosen's hand and walked back. Halfway there, he simply rode on Dosen's back and treated Dosen as a mount. During this period of time, Dosen's body continued to grow and had already exceeded a ton in weight. In front of Dosen, a tiger could only be regarded as a slightly larger cat. The explosive power contained in his body could tear tigers and leopards apart. Even without using magic, it could stand at the top of the Coral Islands food chain. At first, it was a little unwilling when List rode it, but after being beaten up, it obediently became a mount. Carrying a person on its back didn't affect its movements at all. After arriving at Dosen Avenue, List shouted, "Dosen multiple rock spikes." Trembling Woods opened his mouth and let out a roar. Following that, 7 thick rock spikes emerged from the section of the road that had been planned and had yet to be constructed. Good boy. Stroking Dosen's big head, List was very satisfied and continued to issue instructions. Keep going, Dosen, multiple rock spikes. Another 6 rock spikes pierced the ground. Good job, little guy, come rock spikes. A single rock spike was thrust out. Dosen could already understand the difference between rock spikes and multiple rock spikes. A piece of jerky as a reward. List rubbed Dosen's chubby neck and continued to train. Dosen, bigger rock spikes. A rock spike emerged. Bigger rock spikes. Another rock spike popped up. Not qualified, Dosen, no jerky reward. Bigger you get jerky, understand? List shook the jerky in front of Dosen, but didn't give it to let it understand that it was not good enough. Bit by bit. When the rock spike became thicker, List stuffed the jerky into its mouth and repeated the instruction, bigger rock spikes, indicating that the bigger the rock spike, the jerky reward. Dosen's IQ was not low, but because of the language barrier, it could only use conditional reflex to let it understand various instructions. This kind of training was repetitive and boring. But when Dosen understood the new instructions, List would feel a sense of accomplishment, and his ultimate goal was to train Dosen to release more types of magic. Dosen is an intermediate World of Warcraft, no doubt, but it is still a little worse than the Purple Sand Crocodile. As an evolved intermediate World of Warcraft, its aptitude is definitely worse than the innate intermediate World of Warcraft. How to make up for it depends on how I, its master, train it and use skills to make up for its talent. List enjoyed personally training the powerful intermediate World of Warcraft. However, the road repair team following behind him was not so happy. With the rise of Dosen's magic power and the mass production of rock spikes, the workload of the road repair team also greatly increased. The hammer kept pounding, smashing the rock spikes and laying them flat on Dosen Avenue. This was a very difficult task because List required that each piece of gravel should not exceed the size of a bottle cap. The serfs responsible for the gravel needed to keep pounding and even smash the stone into powder. Only in this way the road built would be smooth. Looking at the serfs of the road repair team, sweat mixed with dust dripping down, List felt a little emotional. Compared to them, he was too leisurely. Reincarnation was a technical job and obviously his skills were good. Let Mrs. Abby prepare mung bean soup and send it to the serfs of the road repair team, 1 bowl per person. Seeing the butler Carter coming over, List ordered. They will be flattered by your kindness. As long as they work well for me, I will never be stingy with rewards and bestowments. In Flower Town, I hope that everyone can support themselves with work, eat their fill and wear warm clothes. Even if winter comes, they can still live a healthy life. List said dignified words. His vision was advanced. Squeezing the serfs was very low-level exploitation. Only by mobilizing the serfs' enthusiasm for production could they maximize the exploitation of laborers and obtain more surplus value. He was a man who had read Karl Marx's Das Kapital. As for the capitalist's conscience, wasn't mung bean soup delivered? What else could he do? With so many people building a road, the wages were not in arrears and they only worked 12 hours a day, which was already very kind. If it was another lord, perhaps the serfs could only learn from Susanduo and pick up stones to build the road without spending a penny. Riding Dosen. Chapter 153. After List left, the serfs who were working hard whispered to each other. Sir Lord's pet is too powerful, I don't even dare to look at it. When it roars, my whole body trembles. A serf looked at the distant figure of the flying dust dog and exclaimed. Of course, the flying dust dog is the king of the Thorns Ridge, only the great Sir Lord can tame it. Yes, his lordship is a noble blessed by the knight's glory. He can subdue any World of Warcraft with a single strike of his sword. This winter we won't have to worry about World of Warcraft eating people. The Thorns Ridge, I didn't expect us to cut down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge. It's a pity that my family doesn't have enough people and tools. Otherwise I would have reclaimed 10 more acres of wasteland this year. The town officials said that the more fields we plant, the more food we can save. My son will be of marriageable age next year. I have to prepare food and a house for him, otherwise he won't be able to find a wife. Hey Old Brown, has your son found a girl who is willing to be with him? Of course, I asked Captain Granddad of the Flower Caravan. He promised me to find a girl who speaks whispery for my son. Alright, one with a big butt. They are the new serfs that Sir Lord bought. I heard that they are from the Eagle Kingdom, right? Only the Eagle Kingdom speaks Wind Tongue. However, this is Coral Island. Sir Lord will let them speak Serpentines. By the way, Old Brown, why don't you find one? Among the newly bought serfs, there are several older women who can form a pair with you and help you with housework and work in the fields. Old Brown smiled embarrassedly. I'm looking for it. The women of the continent can't speak Serpentine. When Old Brown married them, the two of them could only gesture. As long as I'm lying on the bed, it doesn't matter if I can speak or not. It's fine as long as I can move. Old Brown's good days are here. Praise the Overlord. Praise be to Sir Lord, the Flower Town is getting better and better. The serfs' thoughts were very simple. Their lives were better than before, and it was all because of the Sir Lord. They had to praise the Sir Lord, farm more and work more. Walls and cages. After losing her freedom, stupid woman lived in this narrow world. From the initial resistance to the gradual acceptance, now that Dosen had come to visit, it was the happiest and most exciting moment for it. Vaguely, it had grown fond of such peaceful days. Every day it would eat, sleep and eat. Occasionally, it would get up to mate and enjoy Dosen's violent thrusts. Woof woof. Dosen's voice came closer and closer. Stupid woman, who was sleeping on the ground, immediately got up, came to the edge of the cage and responded with a bark. Woof woof. A moment later, the gate of the wall was opened, and the two flying dust dogs met each other. List was still riding on Dosen's back, leisurely approaching the cage, which was within the range of Stupid Woman's magic. Stupid Woman did not release her magic. She had almost forgotten about the rock thorns. The training of its conditioned reflexes was very simple. Release the magic, take the food. After a few days, Stupid Woman had the impression that every time she released her magic, she had to go hungry. If I don't use my magic, the food will appear. So she no longer released her magic. Beast instinct told her that eating was far more important than magic. However, List dared to approach Stupid Woman with his magic eye. The castle servants who fed Stupid Woman did not dare to come in. They moved the cage and let Dosen enter the cage to meet Stupid Woman. Originally, the mating session should have gone smoothly, but there was a problem. Stupid Woman could accept Dosen's intimacy, but she resisted and forbade Dosen from sprinting. List had a flash of inspiration. Is Stupid Woman pregnant? Pregnant female beasts would resist mating. Of course, female beasts that were not in heat would also resist mating. It was just that Stupid Woman should be in heat, and she did not resist mating too much before. In any case, since Stupid Woman resisted, it meant that she was either out of heat or pregnant, and was no longer suitable for forced mating. Some time ago, Dosen came to mate every day, but he did not make Stupid Woman pregnant because Stupid Woman was not in heat. Heat involves ovulation. How could she get pregnant without eggs? Dosen, come out. List knocked on the cage. Dosen did not want to come out. He urged him several times before reluctantly coming out. It seems that I have to go to Coral City to find some female wolfhounds and buy them back. Otherwise, Dosen's exuberant energy will not be able to be released. Blindly holding back without reasonable guidance is not conducive to healthy development. I just don't know if Dosen and the wolfhounds can give birth. Thinking about it this way, he was quite looking forward to it. Maybe it could give birth to a batch of magical beast wolf dogs with the bloodline of magical beasts, just like the fire dragon horse. Trembling Woods is a mid-level magical beast. Its bloodline is even stronger. The magical beast dogs born from its mixed blood will definitely be very strong. If they are selected and raised for a long time, they may become a good breed of hunting dogs or working dogs. If it's really possible, then build a kennel and train a wolf dog army. While he was daydreaming, the servant quickly reported, Master, the mage of Coral City followed the flower caravan to the castle. Let's go back. List turned around and rode Dosen back to the castle. The flower caravan was unloading the goods and moving them into the castle cellar. Another carriage was parked on Dosen Avenue. A tall, thin man in a black cloak stood in front of the carriage, looking at the town not far away. There was also a thin boy in a cloak beside him. It was the mage Glanny Truth and his magic apprentice. Mr. Glanny, welcome to Flower Town. Although List was not satisfied with the late mage, he still had a standard aristocratic smile on his face. Glanny lifted the cloak on his head, revealing his messy brown hair. The road in Flower Town is good. It turned out to be a stone road. I thought it would be a mud road. Baron List, building a stone road costs a lot of gold coins. Even if aristocrats need to be dignified, why waste it on a road? While speaking, his eyes were looking at Dosen. The current Trembling Woods was the focus of attention wherever he went. His huge body and mighty aura were extremely eye-catching. TSK, what a good flying dust dog. It is extraordinary, worthy of being the king of Thorn's Ridge. It is far better than a low-level World of Warcraft. It is your luck to have it. No, it is its luck to follow me. List gestured with his hand. Let's talk inside the castle. Mr. Carter has prepared tea and drinks. Glanny did not move, still looking straight at Dosen. Baron List, I wonder if I have the honor to study this flying dust dog? Perhaps I can buy it. You should know that the value of a World of Warcraft lies in what kind of magic equipment it can make. Chapter 154. He wanted to buy Dosen. He wanted to make Dosen into a magic equipment. List felt that he should let go of Dosen's leash and let it teach Glanny how to behave. Intermediate World of Warcraft was not something that a wizard could touch. In the castle's living room, the host and the guest sat down. Perhaps it was the reputation of being a hermit, or perhaps it was because magic was more impressive, but the status of wizards in society was still quite high. They belonged to the upper middle class and were qualified to enter the castle's second floor. Is this the famous ice cream of Tulip Castle? It is said that it was invented by you? When the servant brought the ice cream, Glanny was immediately attracted by the different colors of the ice cream. Ice cream was a high-end food. A lot of ice cream was used to make a small amount of ice cream, which ordinary people could not afford. Glanny had only heard of it but had never tasted it. Try it. In the entire Coral Island, apart from Flower Town, only Tulip Castle, Falcon Town, Beer Castle, and Gravel Castle can eat this frozen delicacy. List had sold the recipe to 4 people: Levis, Elvira, Aubrey Wildgrass, and Brandon Gravel. The other aristocrats wanted to buy it, but were reluctant to spend money. Glanny picked up the cup and took a sip. Is this natural ice? It's not made by magic. Interesting. How is it made? The recipe for ice cream is worth a lot. I don't need the recipe for ice cream. I want to know, where does the ice come from? Baron List, don't tell me that your castle is so small that there is an ice cellar underground. Making ice with saltpeter itself was not something worth keeping secret. But the tone of Glanny's question made List uncomfortable, so he responded faintly, Mr. Glanny, I invited you to Flower Town to make equipment for me and teach me magic knowledge, not me to teach you knowledge. I hope you can straighten out your thinking. Glanny scooped a mouthful of ice cream without any self-awareness. It is the nature of us wizards to seek the truth. The weather is still hot, and it is difficult to even cast ice magic, let alone use natural means to make ice. This is a major discovery, I hope you can teach me. Imparting knowledge costs money, Yi Futian said. How much? Glanny's attitude showed that he was willing to buy information with gold coins in order to know how to make ice with saltpeter. List rolled his eyes and an idea popped up. I'm not short of gold coins. If you want to know how I make ice, it's very simple. Work hard for me during this period of time, and after you're done, I'll naturally tell you how to make ice. Glanny frowned. I hate working with doubts. So, under the premise of ensuring quality, finish the work as soon as possible, and you can get rid of your doubts as soon as possible. List said bluntly. He had figured out how to deal with wizards. There was no need to take anything into consideration and just directly berate them. This was the Flower Town, a place where wizards could not raise any waves. Alright, let's talk about work. Where are the black pearls that you need me to forge magic equipment for? Thomas, go get my black pearl. It's in the cabinet in the study. Just now, he went into the study, took out the black pearl the size of a basketball from the gem space, and stuffed it into the cabinet to deceive people. Thomas quickly carried the black pearl over. He put it on the table. This black pearl was not a regular circle. It was a bit crooked and did not look beautiful. But this was List's aesthetic. For Glanny, who had never seen a bigger black pearl, it was perfect. Incredible, incredible, the black pearl is incredible, but there really is such a big black pearl. He rubbed the black pearl with his hand. The abundant water magic makes me feel as if I'm on the sea. It must have been born in the deep sea. Oh, it also has a heavy aura of history. I feel that it has existed for hundreds of years. Do you think it can be made into a magic equipment to suppress storms? Of course, it's better than I thought. It's the best material for making magic equipment, but I'm afraid the materials I brought are not enough. I need to buy more materials. You're leaving? No, there's no need to leave. I'll write a letter and let Charlie buy it. There's just a lack of some auxiliary materials, but there's no shortage of core materials. Charlie was the thin magic apprentice. Glanny was still very nimble. He immediately got a pen and paper and began to write a letter. He wrote to his fellow magician and asked him to help purchase the materials. He then handed the letter to Charlie and told the flower caravan to take Charlie to Coral City. His fellow magician lived near Coral City. Baron List, I need an independent working space. It takes a long time to make magic equipment, especially with such excellent materials. There are many new houses in town. You can choose one. List stood up. I'll take you to town now to choose your room. Glanny didn't bring a horse and he didn't even know how to ride. So he could only let the servant take him on horseback. They arrived at the town. Glanny's eyes did not stop looking. He saw a large open space which was planned, including drainage channels, roadsides, and green belts. Although it had not been built, it had been divided into pieces. Some of the houses have been knocked down and replaced by neat rows of new houses. There were not many pedestrians. At this time, most of the farmers were carrying stones at the dock. Only a large number of serfs were busy in the workshop area. Here, there's no feces? He looked for a long time before he was surprised. Flower Town prohibits urination and defecation. There are toilets built here. All residents have to go to the toilet. Gort, who had just arrived, answered, Mr. Glanny, long time no see. I hope you like Flower Town. The environment here is more beautiful than Coral City. I have to admit that the streets are clean, but compared to the prosperity of Coral City, this place is too remote. It depends on how you define it. There are no brothels, casinos, or taverns in Flower Town. Life is more peaceful. After all, Flower Town is just a small town. Gort shrugged his shoulders. Get used to its tranquility and you will definitely fall in love with it. Of course, the idle nights are really hard to bear. Freya was more than 4 months pregnant. She couldn't do that. Gort's nightlife could only be done with his hands. List had to exhort, treat Freya well, consultant Gort. If he didn't exhort, maybe this guy would go and hook up with some small town girl. Gort smiled, of course. He walked back and forth in the town. Glanny didn't choose a house here. My work needs quiet, barren List. The noise of building a house in a small town is too noisy and not suitable. Please provide me with a more remote house. He liked the bustling city, but his work needed quiet, so he lived in seclusion in the broken moss town. In that case, consultant Gort, choose a separate house for Glanny among the new houses in the wheat settlement as his residence and studio. Chapter 155. A carriage of materials and utensils were moved to the new house, and Glanny Truth lived in Flower Town. At lunchtime, List entertained Glanny in the castle. The town's aristocrats and quasi-aristocrats were gathered, but the atmosphere of the banquet was sloppy. The mage was not as unreasonable as List thought. Of course, it was definitely not a lively conversation. Most of the time it was Gort and the others who were enjoying themselves, while Glanny just ate and drank. He was more like a creature immersed in himself. There were not enough materials to make the black pearl. So after the banquet, starting in the afternoon, Glanny's work was mainly focused on teaching knowledge. He also had the task of making crystal lamps, but that required the cooperation of a crystal craftsman. Mages could not carve crystals. The flower caravan had invited the crystal craftsman, Brad. They would probably be able to invite him tomorrow or the day after if he was not busy. Magic is the same as Do Chi, they are both forms of magic. Glanny did not beat around the bush and directly said, the world is a triangle, matter is a corner, spirit is a corner, and magic is a corner. This is our understanding of the nature of the world, and it is also the source of magic. Specifically, the caster is the matter, the power of meditation is the spirit, and the combination of matter, spirit, and magic creates magic. So what about a knight? As I said, magic is the same as chi. It is also magic, the caster, and the power of the spirit, creating a variety of chi secrets. The difference between a mage and a knight is that a knight sees himself as a triangle, while a mage integrates himself into the big triangle of the world. As he spoke, he asked, do you understand? List nodded. Triangles are the most stable structure. In fact, he didn't understand at all. What big triangles and small triangles? Glanny continued to talk about his triangle theory. Just like Taoism believes that the universe is divided into the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, Buddhism concludes that matter is divided into earth, water, fire, and wind. Mages believe that the world is divided into 3 parts: spirit, matter, and magic. It was a very broad understanding, but it was unknown whether it was correct or not. The content was very boring. Glanny was not a good teacher and his talk was even more boring. The whole afternoon he repeated the triangle theory over and over again, making List almost fall asleep several times. In the end he could not help but interrupt. Mr. Glanny, I already understand the theory of triangles, so I can skip it. What I wanted to know now was how magic was released and why magic was divided into water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, ice, and darkness. Also, I want to see real magic. Glanny frowned. It is very disappointing to be interrupted in a long speech. Fortunately, he still knew that List was a financial backer, so he raised his left hand, spread his fingers slightly, and quickly rubbed a fireball. Fireballs appeared out of thin air, from small flames to fist-sized fireballs. With a push of his hand, the fireball flew out of the window of the castle and exploded in midair not far away. Fireball, the lowest level of fire magic. Play it again. List narrowed his eyes and cast Mana Eye. He wanted to observe carefully. He had observed World of Warcraft's magic. It was a magic that was condensed from the body's mana and released from the mouth. Glanny nodded. He raised his hand and rubbed another fireball. At this moment, List clearly saw that there was only a small amount of magic in Glanny's body. The chaos had no color. When he released the fireball, the magic in his palm quickly turned red and became fire magic. Then the red magic in the air was attracted by the magic in his palm and condensed into a fireball. Bang! The fireball burst outside the castle. In the field of vision of the magic eyes, the fire attribute magic suddenly drifted away, as if it had never appeared. He already knew the process of magic release. However, it was still not clear why it could condense into a fireball. I could not see what force caused the magic to condense. Perhaps, as Glanny said, it was the power of the spirit. Just like himself, with a single thought, he could drive the chi in his body and operate it according to his thoughts. As for why it operated according to his thoughts, it was unclear. At this time, Glanny continued to rub his magic. Meditate and build a bridge between your spirit and magic power. His voice was a bit erratic, his eyes stared at his palm, and his whole person fell into a certain state. Magic is a third existence outside of matter and spirit. It has emotions, experience them, be intimate with them, and they can be used by you. Gradually, in his palm, a grayish-brown substance appeared, which was the soil composed of magic. The mud ball gradually grew and his voice continued to drift. Meditation is a necessary step to build a bridge. Only when the spirit is in a calm state can you touch the existence of magic. They are everywhere, they cheer and jump. As long as you find them and establish friendship with them, you can get magic and then understand the world. Finally, the mud ball expanded to the size of a fist, and then gradually solidified, condensing into a rock with sharp edges and corners. Glanny did not stop and continued to release magic, compressing and solidifying the solidified rock again until the rock made a cracking sound. With a shake of his hand, the rock was completely broken. But unlike the previous fireball, the broken rock did not disappear, but still existed in the form of debris. Flying rock, earth magic as low level as fireball. However, I can't master it very well. I'm good at water and fire magic, and I'm not proficient enough in wind and earth magic. What about lightning, ice, and darkness? I haven't studied these 4 types of magic, so I can't release them. But I heard that mages can master and release every type of magic. If I get closer to the truth and become a great mage, maybe I can have enough energy to study lightning, ice, and darkness magic. But I'm too far from the truth now, and my spirit is not broad enough. It's already very difficult to be proficient in water and fire magic. What kind of existence is a magic shooter? I don't know. You don't know? Glanny raised his head, his hooked nose pointing to the sky. A magic shooter is the embodiment of truth walking in the secular world, an existence that mages need to look up to. Baronly Siggy, why do you think I would understand a magic shooter? Even if it's you, do you know what kind of existence a dragon knight is? Liszt couldn't refute such a rhetorical question. He always thought that a dragon knight was probably a knight riding a dragon. However, the Sky Knight's high-level battle energy was a level above that of a dragon's battle energy, which was said to be shared with a dragon. As for what a dragon's battle energy was among his relatives and friends, not only did the Count not know, but Marquis Merlin, the veteran Sky Knight, also did not know. All the noble knight had fantasized about becoming a dragon knight. However, a knight with a dragon was a high existence that ordinary people could not come into contact with. Even a king with a dragon such as Sapphire Grand Duke probably did not know what it was like to be a dragon knight. The original Sapphire Grand Duke was a dragon knight, but now the Sapphire Grand Duke was just a companion and keeper of the dragon. There was no chance to ride a dragon. Chapter 156. Are you talking about these residues? Glanny poured the rock fragments in his hand onto the table. They are just ordinary stone residues without the slightest magic power. So why is that? Why don't magic power condensed rocks disappear? Glanny stirred the fragments on the table with his hand. Your question is too big, just like how dragons can produce gems and metals, and how elves can cultivate plants. It involves the essence of the world and I can only tell you my understanding. Please speak. Spirit, matter, and magic power are a triangle. Of course you have said it many times. It is not unchangeable. In other words, spirit and matter can have a dual impact on magic power. Spirit can influence magic power into matter, and matter can influence magic power into spirit. Spellcasters use their own spirit to create magic and form matter. Matter and magic power fuse to form. He paused before saying, dragons and sprites, I think they come from this way. Liszt glanced at Glanny, a little surprised. This statement was quite new. Dragons and energy originated from the combination of magic power and matter. Without waiting for Liszt to ask his doubts, Glanny explained himself. This is just a guess, Baron List, not based on the truth. Therefore, forget it after hearing it. I won't admit that this saying came from me. Mages pursue the truth and abhor lies. List nodded. List did not dwell on it and change the subject. I have seen the birth of sprite worms many times, but I know nothing about the birth of dragons. Do you know? I do not know about the birth of dragons. I am just a wizard. I have never even seen a dragon. Glanny's tone was not without regret. But I can recommend you a book, The Dragonlance Chronicles, The Dragons of Autumn, written by the great magic shooter Odom Truth. It has a very detailed introduction to dragons. Did you bring this book? No, in fact, I do not have this book. I only read it when I was young, when I was a magic apprentice with my teacher. That was my teacher's book collection. In order to find the truth and obtain more knowledge, he had already traveled to the continent. I have not seen him for many years. Without a book, List could only let Glanny recite the contents of the book for him. Naturally, Glanny wouldn't turn down the opportunity to earn money just by saying a few words. Thus, he began to recite the contents that he had written down. Young dragons that are less than 100 years old are the easiest to capture. It is said that most of the dragon knight's feelings for the dragons are nurtured when they are still young. Adult dragons between 100 and 800 years old are at the peak of producing gemstones and metal ores. Dragon blood, dragon feces, dragon saliva, dragon breath, dragon scales, and draconic might can infect the surroundings and form ores. After 800 years they would be old dragons. Most of the elderly dragons would leave their homes during this period of time and head for the Dragon Valley, a legendary place. Some say that the Dragon Valley is in the Devil's Sea, some say that it's in the Swirling Sea, and some say that it's in the Muragadon Mountain, but no one has ever seen it. It's a legendary place. Dragons bury themselves in the Dragon Valley. They will not die, they will only merge with the world, and after countless years they will be reborn as dragons. There were three main types of dragons: elemental dragons, gem dragons, and metal dragons. Metal dragons could infect metal ores: gold, silver, copper, iron, and aluminum. There were a total of 23 types of metal dragons recorded in the Dragonlance Chronicles. Dragons of Autumn: brass dragon, bronze dragon, purple copper dragon, white copper dragon, white mouth iron dragon, mouth iron dragon, gray mouth iron dragon, white heart iron dragon, black heart iron dragon, gold dragon, platinum dragon, silver dragon, mercury dragon. I can roughly remember these metal dragons. Gem dragons could infect gem ores, and they were roughly divided into 4 types: blue, red, yellow, and green. For example, sapphire dragons, ruby dragons, light sapphire dragons, dark red gem dragons, light green gem dragons, and so on. The gems produced by gem dragons all had extraordinary magic, and their value was higher than that of metal dragons, but in terms of production they were not as high. Most elemental dragons were evil dragons, the incarnation of elements. Fire dragons could infect volcanoes, water dragons could infect swamps, wind dragons stirred up storms, earth dragons raised mountains, and so on. High Mage Odom Truth once fought with a wind dragon. His blood splattered across the plains. Now that place is called the Howling Wind Valley. In the unsetting Light Empire, strong winds blow all year round and never stop. Countless mages who specialize in the wind element hope to see the Howling Wind Valley and feel the magic engraved by the wind dragon. List was interested. How many years ago did this happen? According to the time of Odom Truth's life, it should be 4,000 years. At that time there was no unsetting Light Empire. The founding history of the unsetting Light Empire was only 3,000 years old. For 4,000 years, the magic of the wind dragon in the Howling Wind Valley has not dissipated? Yes, this is the power of dragons. They have the ability to change the world. Unfortunately, even magic shooters can't see through the mystery. Glanny shook his head, his regret overflowing. List was equally shocked. He had read a lot of night novels that described dragons, and those were obviously made up at first glance. The dragon's ability was described as god of creation, but its IQ was only equivalent to that of a puppy. The authenticity of the records left by magic shooters would be very high. The magic of the wind dragon had not dissipated for 4,000 years. Such a situation made him dazzled, and he couldn't wait to run to the Howling Wind Valley and observe for himself with magic eyes to see what was different about the magic of the wind dragon. After a while, his eyes flickered slightly and he asked in a casual tone, "Mr. Glanny, I have read in the night novels that some novelists wrote that in addition to elements, metals, and gems, there is another category of dragons called the sacred dragon? I have also heard of the sacred dragon, But there is no record in the Dragon Spear Chronicles, the Dragon of Late Autumn. That's just the nonsense of the novelist. I don't like to read night novels. They are all fabricated, contrary to the truth, lies. When it came to night novels, Glanny was dismissive. Can you talk about the sacred dragon? I have only seen one in the books, the invisible dragon. Those people made up the sacred dragon, saying that there are 5 kinds. Although Glanny despised the night novels, he obviously read a lot and was very knowledgeable. The fairy dragon represents life. If you get it, you will have eternal life. It is very fake. The dusk dragon represents time. It can stop time. I don't know what this is for. The emerald dragon represents dreams. It can sneak into dreams. I have seen emerald. It is a kind of jade. What does it have to do with dragons? As he spoke, he despised it. Listen very carefully. The invisible dragon represents space. It can produce space rings. It is the kind of ring that can hold many things. However, this is as ridiculous as my cup can hold an elephant. There is also the last one, the smoke dragon represents fate. In the night novels I have read, it is said that it is a cloud of smoke. I think the imagination is good. After talking about the 5 kinds of sacred dragons, Glanny concluded with contempt. No one has ever seen a sacred dragon with their own eyes, and no country has such a dragon. This is just made up by those who have never seen a dragon when they dream at night. There is nothing more to say. Let's continue talking about magic. Okay. Liszt responded absent-mindedly. However, in his mind, there was already a monstrous storm. The smoke dragon represents fate. A cloud of smoke. Chapter 157. 7 months ago. Liszt woke up from the darkness, understood his situation, and accepted the memory of his predecessor, knowing that he could see smoke when he was very young. But at that time the smoke was very thin and could not be seen clearly. It was not until he crossed over and merged with this body that he could see the composition of the smoke. It turned out to be a task in the form of text. When he saw the content he was really shocked. If this was a cheat, the smoke formed serpentines instead of Chinese characters. If this was not a cheat, the language style and the content of the task were familiar to him from Earth. He could only convince himself that the transmigrator did not move, but the cheat moved first. Then he accepted the existence of the smoke task and guessed that there must be a dark hand or conspiracy behind the scenes. However, this time, when he heard Glanny introduce the 5 kinds of sacred dragons, there was unexpectedly a smoke dragon that represented fate. This gave him a huge shock. Perhaps my cheat, this smoke task, is not some kind of conspiracy? There was no indication that the smoke task had any intention or drove him to carry out some kind of arrangement. From beginning to end, the smoke task was just a simple task. Then he would be rewarded with something that existed but was easily missed. This kind of reward. Thinking about it carefully, it had a strong color of fate. Whether it was passing by or hugging, it was a different trajectory of fate. Ordinary people could not change the trajectory of fate, or rather, their trajectory of fate was unknown and disorderly. But with the smoke task, Liszt's trajectory of fate had an extra choice. Glanny was still next to him talking about magic. Liszt had entered his inner world. He lowered his head and looked at his body. Represents fate, a cloud of smoke. Could it be that there is a smoke dragon living in my body? Because of the smoke dragon's infection, I can get the right to choose my fate? It was different from Glanny's denial of the sacred dragon. He believed that sacred dragons absolutely existed. The invisible dragon ate 2 cows in front of him and left behind a space gem. This was an undeniable fact. Since the invisible dragon existed, why couldn't the smoke dragon exist? The fairy dragon, the dusky dragon, and the emerald dragon definitely existed. They might be extraordinary to the point of being incredible, but dragons and sprites were incredible creatures. So what if they were incredible? This was a world completely different from Earth, an extraordinary world full of magic. His thoughts continued to wander. He tried to find traces of the smoke dragon. It's not impossible for the smoke dragon to live in my body. After all, I often see smoke missions, but this smoke can only form serpentines. It has never formed the shape of a dragon, nor has it had any communication with me. It's very likely that I didn't obtain it but was just affected by it. Ordinary animals can be infected by a dragon. Although humans have never had a dragon, it's hard to say if my predecessor was accidentally infected by a smoke dragon and became a smoke person when he was young. Thinking so, he didn't know whether he should feel lucky or regretful. Fortunately, it was rare for others to see a dragon, but he had come into contact with 2 dragons, and each of them left valuable gifts. the smoke that could control fate, and the gem space that had a unique world. Unfortunately, the intimate contact between the two dragons did not make him a dragon knight, nor did he gain the friendship of the dragons. Baron List. Baron List. Glanny's shout snapped List out of his daze. What? I'm introducing magic, are you listening carefully? Glanny was very unhappy. Learning magic requires concentration. On the road to pursuing the truth, although lonely and boring, the joy of gaining knowledge can make your mind go from emptiness to fullness. Sorry, I just want to know about magic, I don't want to learn it. List suppressed his messy thoughts and squeezed out a stylized smile. I didn't take a nap, so I'm a little listless. Let's end today's teaching here and continue tomorrow. Thomas, take Mr. Glanny around and visit Flower Town. Yes, master. Thomas stretched out his hand in a gentlemanly manner. Mr. Glanny, this way please. Glanny glanced at List, showing a look of disgust. The truth is getting further and further away from you. After that he strode out of the castle. After Glanny left, List stayed alone in the study, looking out of the window and pondering while listening to Blessed Curl's quack, quack sounds. Smoke dragon. Smoke mission. Fate. Many thoughts flashed back and forth. The smoke in front of him twisted and changed, but the text remained the same. Mission. The Flower Town's business district is gradually flourishing, but the workshop area has been idle for a long time. There are not enough workshops to support it. How can craftsmen be wasted on cutting down trees and farming? Please build 3 new workshops to increase the prosperity of the town. Reward, Chi bottleneck. No matter how he tried to communicate with the smoke dragon behind the smoke, the content of the serpentines did not change. He could not communicate with the smoke dragon that existed or did not exist in his body. He could not change the smoke mission. The so-called choice of fate was just one more choice. It was like building a road in a scenic area. You could choose to build a straight road from the front door to the back door. The smoke mission would prompt you where there was a scenic spot. You could make a turn and enter the scenic spot. As for repairing a toilet or a parking lot, sorry, there was no such function. So now there are 4 possibilities for what happened to me. First, he had close contact with the smoke dragon when he was a child. He was influenced by the smoke dragon and became a smoke dragon with the ability to choose part of fate. Second, the smoke dragon was hiding somewhere in his body and sleeping. The smoke formed a smoke mission, allowing List to steal part of his fate. Third, the smoke dragon might be just a young dragon with weak abilities hiding and waiting for growth. Fourth, he thought too much. The smoke mission had nothing to do with the smoke dragon. It was just a golden finger benefit for a transmigrator. 1, 2, 3 for scenarios were all possible, but there was too little information to tell which was more likely. He tried to recall the memories of his predecessor when he was a child, trying to find a node, the node where he had close contact with the smoke dragon. There was a great possibility that he had been in contact with the smoke dragon. From the beginning of my memory, my predecessor had not been to many places. Red Crab Island was one. He had only been around the Longtaro Castle, and the rest was in the Coral Island. He had been to all the cities of the Coral Island. Every year he would go on vacation with the Count and stay in the castles of the cities for a few days. There were no waves. The ordinary life of the second son of an aristocrat had always been uneventful. Half an hour later he gave up on recalling. He also gave up on pondering. Forget it, since I am here I will take things as they come. If I am fated with the smoke dragon one day I will be honest. I will do what I have to do and let fate decide the rest. If it is really the smoke dragon that represents fate, I believe it is predestined. List stretched. Chapter 158. In the following 2 or 3 days, List's schedule was full. In the morning he trained Dosen, supervised the workshop, and in the afternoon he studied magic, mainly the magic that Glanny had mastered. This mage was proficient in fire and water magic, and had a slight understanding of wind and earth magic. He did not understand lightning, ice, or darkness magic at all. The difficulty of practicing magic is far greater than practicing Qi. The steps of magic are meditation, model, rune, and release. Meditation: mobilize spiritual power to communicate magic. Model: mobilize the magic to form a bridge between the magic inside and outside the body. Rune: use the magic inside the body to repair the details of the bridge, and strengthen the channel for magic to enter and exit. Release: complete the bridge, strengthen the channel, and guide the spiritual power to release the magic. Every magic has a fixed model and rune, and it takes time to master. For example, I can instantly cast Fireball and Water Arrow, which means that after thousands of casts, The details of the magic are completely engraved in my body and brain, and then I can naturally release them. But for earth element flying rock and wind element wind blade, I have to spend time to continuously modify the model and add runes to successfully release them. I have mastered many kinds of magic that need to be kept secret, so I can only show you fireball, water arrow, flying rock, and wind blade. Every mage is a forger of magic equipment. In fact, the reason is very simple. Creating magic equipment is to carve a casting model. The core material itself can be seen as a rough casting model, and the supplementary materials are the runes to make up for the model. Also, the materials on World of Warcraft are very good sources of runes. Your flying dust dog is very extraordinary. I dare to bet that if I kill it and add it to the Black Pearl, I can even create an excellent magic equipment comparable to Little Elf Soldier. Glanny's eyes lit up as he said this. Little Elf Soldier was more precious than gemstone weapons. As the name suggests, Little Elf Soldier was a weapon made from little elves. When the blood of little elves soaked the weapon, it could give the weapon magical power. Although the major kingdoms had enacted laws to prohibit the killing of little elves were used to make weapons. After all, some little elves were not very useful for agricultural production. Don't mention things like little elf soldiers anymore. List abhorred this. Elves were beautiful things and should not be treated like this. Also, don't have any ideas about Dosen. Otherwise, I don't mind letting Dosen have intimate contact with you. Glanny squinted at List, his eyes filled with contempt. Perhaps thinking that List was very hypocritical, many nobles said that it was forbidden to kill elves, but secretly used useless elves to forge elven weapons. Not only small elven soldiers but also large elven soldiers and even dragon elven soldiers. He licked his lips. You mean you're willing to let me study that flying dust dog Dosen? Glanny, I advise you not to think like that. Dosen is very dangerous. World of Warcraft is dangerous. It is particularly dangerous. List faintly warned. After the work was done, if the other party still did not give up, he did not mind letting Dosen freely play. Let's talk about the Black Pearl first. I hope that you can design a control device during the manufacturing process so that it can be switched on and off freely. If the Black Pearl had been suppressing the storm, it was obvious that it would not be possible to rely on the ores alone. Usually, when there was no big storm, the effect of the Black Pearl would be sealed, and when there was a storm, the seal would be lifted. Glanny thought for a moment. No problem, it's very simple. I already have enough ideas to make a top-quality magic equipment. In fact, I can't wait. If you give me another Dosen, the Black Pearl will be even better. After going around in circles, he returned to the topic. List picked up the cold drink on the table and ignored him. Glanny waited for a moment, and seeing the awkward silence, he said again. I saw a wall over at the castle, and inside it is also a flying dust dog. It can also be used. Impossible. Then, what about the chirping World of Warcraft? It should be a wind peregrine falcon. It can barely be tried. Blessed Curls? List's refusal was on the tip of his tongue when he suddenly stopped. Blessed Curls did not know how to train it, and previously planned to train on an empty stomach. But after all, it was a bird. If he let it go, it would immediately fly away, so this method would not work. Since he couldn't find a falconer, Blessed Curls could only stay in the castle and watch, and before it could learn Wind Blade, he could kill it and eat its meat. Do you know any falconers? You want to tame it? I picked this wind peregrine falcon from an egg. It can recognize people, but it lacks training. It can't even release magic. It's best to kill it. With World of Warcraft materials as runes, it can better assist the Black Pearl in suppressing the storm. I want to know, do you know any falconers? Glanny was silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. I know one, but I still suggest you kill it and use it as an auxiliary material for the Black Pearl. Under List's repeated questioning, he finally said the name of the falconer, Alk Sun Truth, another mage living in Coral City. He knew of the existence of the falconer. List was eager to invite the other party, so he forced the reluctant Glanny to write an invitation letter. The two mages knew each other. The fate of Blessed Curls has taken a turn for the better. He was in a good mood. All that was left was to see when Alk Sun Truth would come over. When the letter was sent, the crystal craftsman Brad came to Flower Town and cooperated with Glanny to carve the crystal lamps. On the same night, the fourth night of the workshop's construction, Gort rode to the castle and reported to List, Sir, the workshop has been completed. Very good, it took 4 days to complete, exceeding expectations. Advisor Gort, according to what I said, the serfs who work will be paid 3 times the salary. As you wish. Do you want to inspect the workshop in person? No need. List didn't have time to inspect, he had already begun to call for the smoke mission. Mission completed, reward, chi bottleneck. No matter how many candles are lit, the swaying flame will hurt the eyes. Since you are used to staying up late, you need to take care of yourself. Find a new stable light source, please install 10 crystal lamps for the castle. Reward, a variant type of thorns. The mission was completed and a new mission appeared. It was the chain mission he was looking forward to. Variant thorns again, it seems that I was very prescient not to cut off the fast-growing thorns. List's mouth curved. Every time he completed the thorns worm chain mission, it increased the probability of the thorns worm evolving into a sprite. 10 crystal lamps, purely a welfare mission. I have to go back and urge Glanny and Brad to complete the crystal lamps as soon as possible. Immediately, List's attention shifted to himself. When will the chi bottleneck come? I don't seem to have touched the bottleneck yet. The chi in my body is still growing slowly. After a moment, he called the butler Carter. Mr. Carter, for tonight's supper, let Mrs. Abby cook a batch of World of Warcraft steak. I am a little hungry. Chapter 159. He didn't know if it was because he ate too much World of Warcraft meat at once. He was holding on. At night, he tossed and turned but couldn't sleep. In the corner of the second floor, from time to time, Blessed Curl's quacking sounds could be heard, adding to his irritation. Usually he didn't fall asleep, but at most he could fall asleep after turning over. Tonight he was very excited. It's only been more than half a year and I'm going to touch the chi bottleneck. Feels a little too fast. He was thinking about why he could shorten the training time. In terms of the total amount of chi in his body, he was now definitely not less than Marcus. With good food and good bloodline, there was no reason for him to be worse than Marcus, who was born a civilian. Chi training was related to nutrition, but the noble family's genes were constantly optimized, and they were indeed better than civilians in all aspects. When List was a child, before the age of 10, he was very popular with the Count because of his appearance. Even if he had a stepmother, there was never a shortage of food and clothing. After the age of 10, the Count gradually became disappointed with him. The treatment might be a little worse, but he would never be abused. Therefore, since he was a child, his body's foundation was very solid, but he lacked a little understanding, so he couldn't break through the primary chi before adulthood. When he crossed over, his body and soul merged, and he broke through in one fell swoop, becoming an Earth Knight. In another half a year he would be promoted to an elite Earth Knight. Speaking of which, it's quite natural. Good foundation, high understanding, good food, fast training speed is normal. But he always felt that his training speed was too fast. There must be some aspect that he had neglected. In a flash, a thought flashed through his mind. Is it because of the smoke dragon I am affected by the smoke dragon? But soon he denied it. It shouldn't be, the predecessor had smoke missions when he was a child, and I didn't see how fast his training was. Even Earth Knight couldn't break through. So, what are the other reasons for the promotion? World of Warcraft meat? He had eaten a lot of World of Warcraft meat, especially recently. He had been eating World of Warcraft meat for every meal. If it wasn't for his young body's fast metabolism, he would have had a nosebleed. Levis's diet is definitely not worse than mine. He only entered the elite sequence 2 years ago at the age of 20. Olvera's food isn't bad either. She freeloads all day long in the castle, but she still hasn't become an elite. On the contrary, Lytton is only 12 years old this year, but Madame Marie has been bragging everywhere that her son is going to break through to become an Earth Knight. If it's true, this talent is stronger than Levis's, and maybe only a little bit worse than mine. No wonder half of Tulip Castle's resources are given to him. His thoughts were a little jumpy, and various things about the Tulip Castle surfaced in his mind. When he had just transmigrated, he couldn't wait to not have any contact with the Tulip Castle to avoid embarrassment. As time passed, he became more and more integrated into List's identity. The position of Tulip Castle in his mind quietly changed. He began to care about the Tulip Castle and regarded himself as a member of the Tulip family. Or rather, in his heart, it wasn't that he didn't have the ambition to enter the Tulip Castle. How could his own development be compared to inheriting the family's property? I'm afraid that in the Earl's heart, Lytton is the most optimistic. For this reason, he didn't hesitate to give half of the resources to cultivate Levis to Lytton. Otherwise, no matter how powerful Madame Marie's pillow talk is, it won't be able to shake him. This Earl who fought and killed on the battlefield isn't just listening. The Earl's foundation of the Tulip family was founded by Lee William with a spear and a sword. He is in the prime of his life. The Sky Knight's chi is at its peak. It's not that he doesn't have the thought of going further. Every year, the Grand Duke's development order is never absent. List recalled his contact with Li William. The other party's boundless chi gave people a feeling of incomparable sharpness. The Earl's chi was water-attributed. Generally, water-attributed chi had a gentle and inclusive feeling. However, his water-attributed chi was sharp. There was no doubt that it was influenced by his character. Take List for example. His chi was fire-attributed. It should have been restless and fanatical. However, he gave people a feeling of gentleness and mellowness like a spring breeze. This was the influence of his character. He wasn't even willing to go to the battlefield. He only knew how to hole up in the flower town and farm. How violent could he be? The predecessor didn't like Marie and Lytton, the mother and son. Therefore he soon stopped thinking about them. He thought of his sister Elvira. She was a 19-year-old girl with a somewhat Chinibu temperament. Her talent wasn't weak. She broke through to become an Earth Knight before reaching adulthood. Now that 3 or 4 years had passed, she still hadn't become an elite. This was related to a woman's physical fitness. The cultivation of a female knight was generally weaker than that of a male knight. It was said that there had never been a female dragon knight in this world. Elvira and Lytton are not comparable. According to Levis's situation, I will be a big shock when I enter the elite list. He boasted that he was a genius, a 20-year-old elite. But what is he in front of me? A 16-year-old elite, even in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, is not common. He didn't think that the chi bottleneck was forcibly raised by the smoke mission. The reward was just a bridge. He touched the chi bottleneck because he had already accumulated enough. In addition to me being a genius, there must be other factors. Lying on the bed, List turned left and right. He racked his brains until the latter half of the night. He had another epiphany. Could it be because of the milk? 3 glasses of milk in the morning, noon, and evening, as well as a glass of milk for supper. 4 glasses of milk a day plus various dairy products. It is nutritious. Previously, he thought that the flower town's pleasant climate made the cow's milk so delicious. But obviously this was just his wishful thinking. Even if the climate was pleasant, the milk would not continuously improve its taste. After all, it was not the first time the cows had produced milk. The dairy farm had raised cows for more than 10 years, so the quality of the milk should have been discovered long ago. When Glanny mentioned the smoke dragon during the day, it made him think of many things. The invisible dragon caused a ruckus on the dairy farm, and its dragon might spread. Is it possible that it infected the cows? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. The taste of the milk has been improving. What does this mean? It means that the bloodline of this batch of cows is changing. They are probably already dragon-type cows. Milk Flower, Milk Yellow, and Milk Black were all pregnant. The improved taste of the milk they produced indicated that their bloodline had improved. Perhaps as ordinary cows, their aptitudes were limited and they could not infect dragon-type cows. However, their pregnant calves were very likely to inherit dragon bloodline and become genuine dragon-type cows. He simply sat up. His mood surged. Dragon-type cows sounded very rare and extremely valuable. Starting tomorrow, I will focus on the dairy farm to provide the cows with abundant pasture. In particular, the 3 pregnant cows must be taken care of so that their calves can give birth smoothly. He could not sleep. He forced himself to calm down and began to cultivate chi. The cells in his limbs and bones produced chi in a steady stream and converged in his meridians. Maintaining this state of cultivation, he cultivated all the way until the next morning. When the sun rose, the first ray of sunlight shone in. List abruptly opened his eyes. At this moment he felt the chi surging in his meridians in his body, producing a feeling of fullness. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.